I heard that this got a little heated. I checked the live stream as it was going on, and I saw him yelling, and I thought, well, why not have this family Thanksgiving disagreement figure out for us what the Democrats got wrong in 2024? Dylan, you asked earlier what demographics watch Hasan. He does a detailed census every year, and here's the stats if you want to look. Gender, that's my main thing I wanted to see. Oh, snap! It's mostly men, but it keeps decreasing. Now, here's my question. Do you think that's A, because more women are joining his audience, or B, because more of his audience is transitioning? Which one do you think it is? Do you think that it's just, you know, more women have come over because Big Muscle Man? Or is he getting new Vegas fans in his audience? You can see with non-binary, that goes up too. See that? You never know. You know, a lot can happen in 4 years and figuring yourself out. More non-binaries too. But no, it looks like it is majority men. I actually did not know if it was majority men or not, so this is interesting data. Interesting data, but increasing women. Increasing women. Rates of women up. Okay, let's watch.
Yo, that's out of line. That is out of line, dude. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, Shaky Gurga is here in the building. It's Thanksgiving time, baby. It's Thanksgiving time. Woo! Unk is here.
Okay,
what is that?
I got a Thanksgiving present for you. Okay?
You do? Okay. Oh my God.
How much do you love this?
I would love that. That's actually a great gift. I want it, dude. I've can we do when 2028 comes around? I gotta buy up like Hunter 2028 or something. I gotta buy up the domain names in advance. We gotta draft him to go 2028. People are like, oh, we shouldn't have run Biden this year. Biden should have stepped down. I agree. Biden should have stepped down for 2020. I agree, especially looking back. But that doesn't mean we can't run another Biden. Name recognition. It's what's important.
I know you're a big fan of Hunter Biden.
I know. This reminds me of one of the first.
I'll get you a new one.
This is no, it's fine. I like it. Did you guys make this? Is it your merch?
Yeah.
You made a free Hunter. It would have been better if he was smoking crack in it, but instead of cigs. But
come on, that's pretty good.
No, it's sick.
You know who came up with that idea?
Who?
I did.
I love that. Okay.
Free Hunter, baby. Let's do a poly market here.
Okay. For poly market.
Wait, no, seriously.
Wait. You want to know something about? You want to know something about those? First of all, they got raided by the FBI.
The CEO did.
Yeah, the CEO did. I don't know if you know this, but they offered me as a starting point of the conversation $1 million to just sponsor my election coverage, and I said no.
Good for you. God bless your heart. I probably would have said yes.
I would have said yes too. Are you kidding? $1 million? My God, I'd take that money and run with it. Oh my God, $2 million? No, $1 million. Do you know how many embeds I could do? Oh my goodness, the camera quality would be so good.
Well,
okay, so
just like that's the entry point of the conversation. They were like, "We'll give you $1 million." I was like, "No." Anyway,
okay. So, anyways, put that aside. Who do you think is gonna pardon Hunter? No one, Joe, or Donald?
I don't know.
The funniest play would be Donald Trump pardoning Hunter Biden as a move to unite the country. That would be the move.
I feel like Joe could possibly do it, but he respects norms and civility too much almost in his like weird twisted way. But also his mental faculties have declined dramatically over the years, so maybe he could still.
He respects norms in his own twisted way. Just what does that mean? What kind of twisted norms does he have? I mean, I guess there's like certain like established governmental. I don't know, just not a lot of detail there, but whatever.
He could still pull through. I don't think Trump would do it though.
I think Trump would do it, but I think Joe's gonna do it because Papa Joe's in a no given time in his life.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, landmines for everyone. You know, let's bomb Russia with American missiles. Yeah. So I think he's at the point where he's like, yeah, my kid. Yeah, I'm free him. Shut the f up.
Okay. So before we get
landmines for everyone. Joe Biden was against landmine usage up until the recent approval for Ukraine, the anti-personnel landmines. And in fact, that's why it was so crazy, because it was Biden reversing his own policy. He gave landmines to one country. I don't know if that's landmines to everyone, but whatever.
It started. You might be confused as
Bob and Wap.
Bop and Wop got a tier 1 subscription. Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, happy Thanksgiving. Time for all the good little boys and girls to, put out some cookies and milk for Cenk or be consumed.
to why we're calling you Shaky Gurga.
Yes.
And a lot of people in the past has, said your name incorrectly. It's been very frustrating for myself, but I'm sure it's been somewhat frustrating for you. Maybe you're used to it. But I had actually never heard this version of your name. And when we first heard it, we were like,
Isn't it Cenk or is it Cenk? Or it's Cenk, right?
This is the greatest thing I've ever heard. And now we refer to you as Shaky Gurga. Let's take a look.
It's possible that because he's such a low-tier, lowbrow debater.
He's not a debater, and he's been very clear that he doesn't. He's not a debate lord.
Because he's literally a.
Wait, who are they talking about?
So this is. Does anyone have the OG TikTok? I want to show Cenk. I want to show Uncle Cenk the OG TikTok. Does anyone have it?
Debating the election?
TikTok got taken down. I can't find it. Okay,
I don't want to watch Andrew Wilson Cenk drama.
This is the I guess like one of those like misogynist podcasts where they just like will have someone. They'll have like some pervert guy who's like really good at debate like women that they hire to be on the podcast to be ritualistically humiliated basically, and this is like their debate champion that they bring forward, and it was the girl that was on.
Andrew Wilson is their debate champion.
The girl that was on was apparently a fan of mine and was saying like, oh, Hasan is going to hate that I'm on this podcast because he hates you guys. The original TikTok, I think. Oh, is this it?
You appear to have a crush on Hasan Abi. Is that correct?
Yes, if he ever watches this, I'm sorry.
Sorry for what?
For being on here, he hates it.
Why?
Okay.
He's a socialist, and he knows the formula of the podcast. I'm not going to go into, you understand.
It's possible that because he's such a low-tier, lowbrow debater.
He's not a debater, and he's been very clear that he doesn't. He's not a debate lord.
Because he's literally a moron. So it doesn't surprise me he can't
I
debate.
completely disagree.
He's literally a moron. He is not intelligent.
Okay, I don't need to. When do they start arguing with each other?
I really, really want to win, right? So like they're total zombies, and they go into the YouTube section. Look at any of our YouTube videos. It is at least 50% trolls, right? I was right. You were wrong.
Can we get to the election talk?
And I thought because she was a blank slate, that there was an opportunity there to fill that blank slate with actually somewhat good policies. Even if she's not charismatic herself, she could have still, especially after she got locked in with Tim Walz, I was like, oh, this is great. She's going to be forced to like...
Bankrupt man. Hey, somebody subbed. Who subbed? Thank you for subbing. You didn't have to. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Have to defend some of these positions and inevitably maybe even move away from the tack to the right attitude that the Democrats usually have. Of course, I kept warning over and over again, if she does that, she's going to lose. And she did do that, and she lost.
But look, here's the thing.
But yes, an open primary, I think, would have put forth possibly, would have put forth a stronger candidate regardless.
Yeah.
But we also don't.
I don't know that. I don't agree with that. Look, I agree that an open primary process should be the way it goes, and we should have nominated somebody outside of Joe Biden this time around. We should have had an open primary process like you usually would, not when you have an incumbent president, but when you were going to pick somebody new. But we didn't know that Joe Biden wasn't going to be able to run again. There were warnings, but at the end of the day, when the audience said no, old man, it was too late in my mind for an open convention. And to have an open primary. Well, you could have had a convention where the party elites get together, take all the electoral college votes, and choose who the next nominee is going to be. But honestly, I don't know if I trust the Democratic Party and the elites who control the votes to be able to just pick it. Because to be clear, we would not have enough time for an open primary where everybody gets to vote. Because we already had that with Joe Biden. Joe Biden was already chosen through that open primary. Open primary, as much as you want to call it. It's not really. So we don't have enough time to do it again. So the only way we could choose somebody else would be through an open convention where those who are at the convention, mostly the party elites, would choose who the next nominee is. I don't know if they would, number one, I don't know if they would have picked a stronger candidate. Number two, if we did go through with an open primary anyway, we would have been attacking each other into the buzzer. And by the time we actually got to pick somebody, I mean, how much time do you have to really rally around the flag? And those primary, those primary election wounds are going to still be open. A lot more open than they are usually. So, I don't know. I think that an open primary, generally speaking, would have been better. But I don't really see an open primary as really ideal under these circumstances. Of course, I could be wrong here, but we didn't have like any time.
I don't know like how chaotic that process would have looked like as well.
Who cares? So let's just break it down one by
Who
one.
cares? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like a second primary vote with 100 days until the election. There's also like voter registration deadlines. We would have to do that election so quick to register in states like Ohio in time.
One, do you agree that Biden should have withdrawn a year and a half ago?
I agree that Biden should have picked a better VP candidate that he knew was going to be the transitional.
Can we also like give the right wing a tiny bit of credit here? I mean, they go too far when they say she's just a DEI hire. She was the Attorney General of California. She was a senator from California.
She had the
was she
bona
picked because
fides.
she was a black woman? Of course, she was picked because she was a black woman.
I mean, Biden said that was the real reason why she not only picked. I'll take it one step further. It's not even Kamala Harris that frustrates me about that. It's the fact that Biden said that about Ketanji Brown Jackson, who literally is more deserving of a Supreme Court appointment than most of the other Supreme Court justices. And he still the bag up by turning around and being like, oh, yeah, I'm picking a black woman, Jack. And it was nutty because, like, that's the first time we've had a public defender sit on the top court. Like, that was not a DEI hire in the way that conservatives mention it.
So do you know that I'm against affirmative action? I've always been against affirmative action. And
wait, really?
Yeah. And the reason
I did not know that.
Yeah. The reason is because Ketanji Brown Jackson is an excellent Supreme Court justice who's perfectly qualified. So is Sonia Sotomayor. But the minute that any minority, by the way, including us, gets any position of power, respect, etc., what does everybody do? I just got it because they're black. They just got it because they're this.
No, I think
you think that's just a right wing thing, but it isn't.
But also, Miss Jackson was not chosen because of some affirmative action program. She was chosen because the president made the explicit decision that he was going to make the next Supreme Court justice black because we never had a black woman at the highest office of the land, and he promised to do so. And so that's not an affirmative action program. It's a different thing. But I agree that like making a prerequisite for a position that you have to fill in certain ethnic checkmark is just not only I think it's bad because I think it deprioritized meritocracy and statescraft, but also I think it's bad. It's a bad pitch. It's hard to sell to people. And I think that there are real legal accomplishments that Miss Jackson had, but when you pitch it like that, that focus on race is not going to be in a way that's progressive and helpful and, oh, look, there was this advancement. So truly any American could reach the highest office of the land if they apply themselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be, she got a leg up over other people because of her race, and I resent that. because the country is difficult right now.
No.
Everyone's head.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but
He can mention something like he's also going to bring a certain background and perspective that the office has never held, allowing that office to get a point of view that it is not held before the Supreme Court, like something like that. You can like pitch it in a way that I think is much more palatable. But when it's just like, I'm going to choose a black woman to be a Supreme Court justice, like, okay, it feels like, I don't know if that's the first thing you should be looking for. And it sounds like it was the first announcement around what he was looking for. I mean, even if it wasn't, obviously I think policy priorities would take center stage. That's how it was received.
Respectfully disagree. I think that is like ultimately caving in and capitulating to right-wing framing on the issue. The affirmative action conversation has always been a band-aid solution to like significantly more consequential racial dynamics in this country that have never been addressed at all. I've always looked at things from a class position regardless, and like the real affirmative action is legacy admissions.
100%.
Like,
we even have a petition on tyt.com to end legacy petitions, because if you're against affirmative action, you have to be against affirmative action for super rich dudes whose dad went to Princeton or gave Princeton $1 million. Okay.
Yeah. George W. Bush going to Yale,
Yeah, that's totally bullshit. And by the way, you know who else was an affirmative action pick? Joe Biden. Because Obama picked him because he was an old white guy. He's like,
old
I don't
racist,
really care.
Old racist white guy who
by
has
the
like
way,
gas.
you know that with absolute
Does that make Tim Walz an affirmative action pick?
certainty, because in his final list, he had a big list in the beginning, but in the final list, it was only old white men, because they knew they had to balance the ticket because he was a young African American. So let's not pretend that they didn't pick on demographic information.
No, but
Obama did, and so did Biden.
Yeah, but also it doesn't work in that direction regardless, because like obviously the underlying sentiment is that like, affirmative action is not the reason why people think black people are undeserving of their position in society. They already thought that, and now they're using affirmative action to continue to compound on that argumentation.
But it does compound, and I hate that it compounds because it's not true.
I'm more like the process itself in terms of like affirmative action in general, albeit is still, like I said, not a good solution to systemic racism and inequality that persists, and black people being consistently underserved in American society even now. Yeah, even when I recognize that, it's still not like, anything that moves the needle in an appropriate direction is fine. Like I don't have an issue with it, especially if it's like, for example, making colleges more diverse in general. That's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all, because I do agree with college administrators when they say that America is a diverse country and that we want our student body population to be more representative of the country as a whole. Yeah. And I think that actually makes it a more like, these are some of my most like rad lib takes, I would say, but I do think that actually makes it a better learning environment in general. When you're a kid from the countryside that has
but like is the best way to achieve this by giving people updates in a point system on what chooses them to go into an education? Like the idea of somebody getting extra points because of their race, I just think that is, I just don't see. I understand how that it can increase admissions from the black community or from other communities that are not usually represented, but it feels like the goal should be to increase the educational outcomes in those communities by investing to them at the root, and then through their own merit, being able to get into these education systems. Because this would be true not only of affirmative action, but any program that would take somebody not based in their merit and give them extra point. For example, like legacy. There's certain like educational institutions where if your parents was in it, it's more likely for you to be able to get into it. Once you put somebody in that position where they're getting extra points in the admissions process for stuff that's not academic or outcome based, then what you could do is ended up putting them in an educational institution that they're not prepared for and they don't have the academic rigor for. So not only could you not be setting up people for success, you could actually be setting up people for failure and financial ruin, because these are not cheap financial institutions either. And like, again, I think investing at the base, at the root, makes more sense. And I think it's much more likely to increase the educational outcomes anyway. But I don't know if we should be talking about property taxes, paying for education right now. Seems like a bit of a deviation.
Never really encountered black people other than like, seeing black people and black culture on television. When you actually go to college and you're in a dorm and, your dorm mate is a black person, for the first time, you're actually encountering and developing interpersonal relationships with people that you otherwise never would have.
So,
and I think that makes for a better learning environment.
So two things about that. Look, as you were talking, I came up with an analogy here. Let's see how it goes. I view affirmative action as kind of a counterproductive Band-Aid on a wound. So the right wing says the wound doesn't exist. No, I think the wound does exist. I just don't think that the Band-Aid is the right solution, right? Because what the Band-Aid is doing is it's covering up the wound and not letting it breathe and not letting it heal.
You're a bit of an accelerationist.
Okay, so
in that regard,
well, it's a very different accelerationist.
No, and but so, that is
but I'm not trying.
Wait, wouldn't accelerationist in this case be like, how do we worsen race relations? And then like how do we make sure that every movie that white people sees of black people is the worst representation of black people, and every movie that white people sees is the worst representation of white people, and that like a race accelerationist would do everything possible to like decrease the positivity of race relations. It'd be like those guys in Atomwaffen, that Nazi terror group, or what Dylan Roof tried to do, who gives a bad name to Dylans everywhere.
I'm trying to accelerate racism. I'm trying to end racism.
That's what pure Marxist-Leninists say about the welfare state.
Okay,
it's a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid continuation of like of.
Yeah, but they're wrong. That's a completely different topic.
Okay, I'm just saying.
I got you. So, but in this case, so constantly reaffirming and reaffirming, we should think about race. We should think about race. We should characterize everyone on race. That doesn't help defeat racism. It perpetuates racism.
Well, I don't know if like the problem is the focus on race. It's just, I think the idea of race playing a factor in what most people assess should be a meritocratically based system is just going to hurt race relations. Now, the question is if whether or not it helps X group of people enough to make up for that. Definitely when there's other alternatives available, even if they're not legislatively permissible at the moment or like plausible.
So I think it's a terrible idea. I hate that we view ourselves separately based on different categories, race, gender, sexual orientation, etc. It doesn't mean that there aren't things that are going wrong now. It doesn't mean that there isn't systemic racism. It means that there's a better way to address it. And then in terms of the diversity, look, I would do not affirmative action, but whatever is the appropriate way to put a thumb on a scale, but for acceptance into schools based on class, not on race. And it's not because of class dynamics and I don't want the rich to go to good schools, etc. No, I'm saying that if you came from a poor background, I don't give a goddamn if it's from the hollers of West Virginia or your black kid in the Bronx. If you rose up and got great scores and great grades in a situation like that, you are more likely to be successful. It's not just that it gives you diversity.
What it gives you Confucianism
is,
pilled.
Okay, I'm what pilled?
Confucianism pilled.
Okay, whatever the that means.
Yeah, no,
okay.
you wanna. Yeah, this is once again, Jenkins, Dengus, rise up. You want a Chinese style
meritocracy,
pure meritocracy, pure meritocratic approach. Now, the problem with that is that when you have underserved communities consistently, you got to put your thumb on the scale in a certain place because we don't have true equality of opportunity.
Well, it's the thing that gets me though is like. Hasan's message, and the message of a lot of socialists at the moment, is that Democrats didn't message on class. That and this isn't something that he says, but some people say we focus maybe too much on race, focus too much on these other things, when the main divider right now is class and education. But education is more boring. But class, especially important from the Marxist purview. And so what Cenk is saying is address the class divide. Be like, if you're a black person in Detroit or a white person in West Virginia, both equally poor, but both equally smart, you should both have the same odds of getting into the highest educational institutions of the country. We should take advantage of your educational skills. But my thing is, if we're just taking people and putting them into educational institutions that I'm not going to say they're not ready for, but if you're giving them extra points based upon factors that they cannot control, that are not based in the academic curriculum, and would have been enough to edge them above their contemporaries, which in these cases, in most circumstances, that is not the case, where it's like, I wouldn't have got in, but then my black points were put in, and then I won, and I took the job of Whitey McWhiterson. Like, no, it's not how it works usually. It's a huge bunch of factors that they look at and decide if whether you're getting into college or not. But I mean, it to me, it feels like putting people into a job that they potentially, or position potentially wouldn't have been able to get on their own merits. And therefore, you could actually end up, like I said earlier, I think undercutting them as well as the institution itself and the best possible investment that slot could be if it could go to somebody who would be more deserving. I think, again, the goal should be getting to the root, getting to people when they're younger. So by the time they get there, they're doing the best with the best resources that they have, the best opportunity they have, because we laid the groundwork for them. Like, it feels like it's a temporary stopgap that hurts race relations and could leave people unprepared for the task ahead.
Opportunity in this country, and obviously people like yourself and myself, that's what we're advocating for. Republicans will turn around and bastardize that critique it by saying, you want equality of outcome. We don't want equality of outcome.
No, I
we
definitely
want
don't
true
want
equality of opportunity.
Think about it this way. If your aid is mostly helping poor people, and black people on average are poorer than white people, which is a huge contributor to lower economic outcomes, then wouldn't the solution be trying to spread it out based upon class and not race? You could say that increases class tensions, but I mean, to be quite frank right now, I think the workers need a little bit of a thumb on their scale. And I mean, it would end up having, in effect, the same effect. The only difference is it would be a wider net. It would include people not based on race, but based on class. And the most people are working class. It's a much more unifying message that crosses barriers of race.
Opportunity. And when there's no true equality of opportunity, when black communities are consistently underserved, when you look at the Chicago public school system that is 90% of the state of Illinois' like black and brown student body population
takes care of that.
being consistently underserved, you are getting to a point where people are not being propped up. People are not being propped up to succeed in this process. So I think like you're right. Analyzing it from a class position is good, because even though there's a racial dynamic and the racial disparity that exists in the American normal order of business, the violence or the inequalities, the structural inequalities, are still dished out on a class-based perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the hollers in Kentucky don't have great public schools either. So they also had to overcome a lot. Right. So like saying that a black guy at Exeter should get an advantage, but a white kid in the middle of Missouri who's going to a shit public school too should not get an advantage. That makes no sense at all.
I don't think that that's what people are advocating for, though. I mean, I don't know.
They're
I'm not
literally advocating for that. 100%.
I'm not advocating for that. I don't know
So
what
that's
you
why
mean. I don't think people who are I don't think that like black activist groups are saying like, no, the poor white people. Like, I don't.
No, but they're saying give an advantage based on race, not class. And I'm saying I 100% disagree with that.
Okay. Well, again, Band-Aid solution,
Okay,
regardless.
so back to Biden and Harris. So we both agree Biden should have gotten the f out of the race. Crazy.
Can
right?
I just say one other thing, actually? Historically, the wrong that has been committed is on the basis of race. So I think the solution to that problem, albeit should feature a class dynamic, absolutely will have some racialized component attached to it, because you can't right a historic wrong by simply being like, yeah, we're just gonna.
So look, this is really important. So let's talk about balance, because in the beginning, when let's take longshoremen or firefighters. They're all white let's say in the South, right, where you've got massive Jim Crow laws. if you deny that and you think, oh no, black people got perfect opportunity in 1940s and 20s and 60s in the South, you're just in a different planet. So there's no point in talking to you, right? So they're at a massive, massive disadvantage, to say the least. They can't get in. And the longshoremen, I get it. Their instinct is, I want to give my job to my son. It's a good job. It pays well, etc. Right? So I want to pass it on to my son. Now, at some point, you have to use affirmative action in the beginning to break through that. Because if you allow that to happen, black people are never going to be able to break through, right? So you've got to, in the beginning, say, look, we're taking action based on race because the discrimination was based on race. But if you do that forever, then you never break the racial paradigm, right? We're always thinking about race and we're always separating based on race. So it can't be forever. It can't be never. So then the question becomes, when do you end affirmative action? And we started in the 1960s. Here we are in 2024. If it hasn't worked by now, I got news for you. It ain't never going to work.
Yeah,
so
but
it's
that's
a wrong
also
solution to a real problem.
But that's also because, like, it's not, it hasn't even, no, Cenk is not saying racism is over. Pack it up, guys. No, he's not saying that. I
literally said that's not the case. The wound still exists. The wound is real.
Yeah.
And I literally said systemic racism is real.
Maybe
so
you might not like this, but I do think that reparations is part of the solution to this, albeit it's politically impossible to get through in a country that is so resilient in their interpretation of whites, how much they've internalized white supremacy.
But again, reparations is a super interesting, nuanced conversation. So on the one hand, and I'll give credit to Marianne Williamson here, I thought she phrased it best.
When people talk about reparations,
when she
like it's as simple as this. If you're talking about just a flat sum that you give people based upon their race and their birth, there's just not, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's good policy. And I think it will crush American race relations. I think it'll crush it. I mean, just think about my tax dollars go to $20,000 to $25,000 down payment for somebody who didn't have to work for shit. I barely can pay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like terrible, terrible. And also, if you just give a bunch of people money, that's not how you just build wealth. It isn't just by giving people money. Because if you give people money, but you don't have any knowledge on how to tend to that money or how to grow that money, how to invest that money, then you're not going to have that money for very long. So just like, if you're talking about like reparations, like right off the bat, it can't be just like some lump sum pay. It would have to be something based in the communities that were most affected by slavery. But if you do it that way, it's not just going to be a race-specific thing. It'll probably be a community-specific thing, with those communities primarily being largely black. Because if you're like a little white kid and you get caught in a community that has been caught up in poverty as the ripple effects of slavery, that the storekeep didn't have much opportunity because of their forefathers and the school teacher, same message, and you're in that community, you might not have all the same disadvantages, but if you're surrounded by economic dilapidation, that affects you whether you like it or not. No matter what skin color you have.
Said a debt is owed. And that is actually very literally true.
Yeah.
So we used the country at large and the country I love. And yes, we came to it much, much later. But that country took advantage of all of that free labor to build what we love and what we now take advantage of and what we came here for, right? So hundreds of years of free labor, no matter what your race is or what your condition is unacceptable. They never got paid for that. It's a massive robbery from African Americans in this country. So I not only acknowledge that, but I'm enraged by it. But now, what are we going to do? If you propose a reparations that's so extreme as San Francisco did, where they're like, oh, any black person can buy a house in San Francisco for $1. What the?
What?
Okay.
What do you? I don't even know what you're talking. Hold on. What are you talking about?
Had this insane thing where they're like, okay, now every white and non-black, including Latinos, including Middle Eastern, Asians, etc., have to give money to black people in this city or in this town where they passed it.
Wait, hold on. Let's just take a look at it first. Let's analyze it a little bit, because this seems a little kooky.
You're going to see how insane it is.
This seems a little bit kooky. So proposals include financing debt forgiveness, guaranteed annual incomes for families and homes in the city for $1. San Francisco backs reparation plans, including $5 million to eligible black adults. More than 100 recommendations included payments of $5 million to every eligible black adult, the elimination of personal debt and tax burdens, guaranteed annual incomes of at least $97,000 for 250 years, and homes in San Francisco for just $1 a family. San Francisco Lawmakers heard
That's
a
real.
range
That's
of,
the Guardian.
They heard I know. They heard a range of options. Sometimes people have ideas. They present those ideas in a situation like this, in like a public town hall setting, and regardless of
Enthusiastic support by the council.
Okay, so but here's the thing.
This is,
this is some of the 100 different recommendations that came through, and it doesn't seem like they followed through on this or any number of these different reparations plans. It's like people have a multitude
enthusiastically received.
I think saying that is very different than following through on it as a part of your legislative agenda.
So my point was there are extreme proposals on reparations that make no sense.
Okay.
And you're agreeing it makes no sense.
Okay.
Right? That's a ludicrous position.
Yeah,
right?
but
so
this is
hold on. Is there a way to do reparations in a way that does make sense? And I think the answer is yes. I don't think it's giving black people a house for $1. I don't think it's giving them money, etc. But the new school has proposed some interesting ideas, including, hey, what if we provided tax breaks that would be material in buying housing for African Americans? So, well, okay, that's interesting, because now, or you've created a fund that allows them to turn it into an education fund for their children, right?
This person also has a good point. We should have a ceasefire in Gaza has also been enthusiastically received by the Biden admin. Didn't mean they did a damn thing, because politicians
but we're not arguing, guys. If you think it's absurd, great, fantastic. We all agree it's absurd.
I don't think that there are I'm sure that there are some people who think this is a fantastic idea, and they could get into an academic conversation about it. It's just more so a matter of like the framing of this to make it seem as though like the
No, I'm setting the
San
outer
Francisco,
extremes, Haas.
Yeah, but like,
okay, so I'm saying when you say reparations, a lot of people are going to say hell no. A lot of people are going to say hell yes. But my point is, but what are we saying yes or no to? So if you
okay, when people talk about Obamacare now, they don't call it Obamacare. They call it the ACA. They talk about the protections for pre-existing conditions. And now Trump, the guy who was trying to behead the ACA before he was stopped by John McCain, is now claiming the pre-existing condition parts of the ACA, right? Even though one of his main pitches when he was running against Hillary back originally was that he was going to gut and kill Obamacare. But now that it's not called Obamacare, now that most Americans like the benefits that they get from it, now that people refer to it as the Affordable Care Act, or ACA for short, don't even mention that it was once a Democrat policy, then you don't need to purge it anymore because of how it was messaged, because people can tie the ACA to that benefit. But when you hear Obamacare, that word has been so politicized, it's dead on arrival. So some of this is messaging. Like if you call it reparations instead of, for example, like maybe you call it a downtrodden community education fund or something along those lines. You get the idea. Then, I mean, you could see like damn near double-digit jumps in support or drops, depending on how you message it.
you take the most extreme example, I say no, and everybody says no. But it's not I'm agreeing with you. That's not the only proposal. I'm just telling you, New School has proposals that are really interesting about, hey, what if it was directed towards education or housing? We promised 40 acres and a mule, and we lied. We never gave them the 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah, only reparations were given to slave owners, as a matter of fact, for lost revenue off of the freed African men and women.
Yeah. So you see what I'm saying? That you could do it in a way that where middle America goes, oh, I get it. That sucks. That was an injustice. And we're trying a small thing here to make up for the injustice, so that it at a minimum, symbolically, to say, thank you, brothers and sisters, for putting up with this shit. Like, I know you didn't do it voluntarily, but you helped build this country and we appreciate you. So get on a page where we understand each other and appreciate each other, instead of framing it as I'm taking from you. You owe me and I'm taking from you, right? So that perpetuates a wrong cycle. Whereas but in order to do that, Haas, last thing on it is you've got to have like truth and reconciliation, just like South Africa did. Here's all the up shit we did.
South Africa's, South Africa's Reconstruction period also was not a great
But Truth and
success either.
Reconciliation was excellent. So that portion of it was great because they said, here's all the terrible things we did. Guys, it doesn't mean that white people today are racist. It doesn't mean white people today are awful. It doesn't mean all white people are the same. It doesn't mean any of that. What it means is in the past, there were terrible things that were done. And here's us trying to make up for it in some small way that the country agrees to and we're all on board for. And sincere apology and a sincere thank you. And now, from now on, let's move forward. Let's move forward and cut all the talk of like race this and race that and gender this and gender that from both sides, by the way. The right wing starts more identity politics than the left wing does. So now the right wing guys will have their heads will explode. What do you mean? You guys try to find wedge issues on everything. And then you go more and more in extreme. And I think you guys, Haas, fall into that trap way too often. We'll get to that later.
Wait, let's get to it now.
Okay.
What do you mean by that?
So you know what we're going to talk about, the trans issues. So on trans issues, as an example, over 60% of Americans agree. They, of course, they should have the same constitutional rights, same rights to housing, employment, rules against discrimination, etc. Does 1/3 of the country?
That's crazy though, because that's the wait. Constitutional rights, 60%. That's low. I'm sorry, but constitutional rights? That's not a thing. Like, oh, you were born a Mennonite, you don't have freedom of speech now. No, that's not how it. That's how it should be for everyone. 40% saying no freedom of speech for the trans. That would be scary. I imagine when people hear rights or like constitutional right, imagine like some people just put whatever in their head instead of like, you know, the idea that every single person who is a U.S. citizen gets these rights.
Disagree? Yeah. Sad day for them. 2/3 of the country agrees trans people should be protected. I'm 100% on board for that, right? And if you're a right winger and you go, no, man, they're weird, they're different, they're blah, 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 and I'm going to hate them. Well, good luck to you, brother. I'm not going to hate them, and I'm going to protect them, okay? But so that didn't work for them. So they went digging. So then they go, okay, we should ban trans people from the military.
Did you read the New York Times article I told you to read on this the last time we had this conversation?
I'm not sure I did.
About how, okay, so...
you know they went digging.
Yeah. So what you're describing is what I was explaining to you, that the Christian groups, the right-wing Christian nationalist groups, in the aftermath of the failed initiative to do a trans bathroom bill in North Carolina at a time when Donald Trump was pro-trans, openly stating he was pro-trans, openly criticizing the North Carolina legislation, saying leave it as it is, nobody cares. Caitlyn Jenner can piss in whichever bathroom she wants to piss in as long as she's pissing in Trump Tower. When all this stuff was happening, there was definitely a different attitude overall. I think part of that was because, just like you also recognize, most Americans, like, they just think trans people are being discriminated against and unjustly. And the other reason was because it just seemed like cruel and unusual for no particular reason. So
I think generally speaking, Americans are very much of the idea of you do your stuff, we'll do mine. And I don't think this is just an American thing. There's many countries that have this mentality. But America, I feel like it's given like an ideological foundation in some way, you know, like freedom, I could eat my burgers, you can shoot your guns, you know, it's given some undertone.
What these,
I think a lot of it really is just trans people do whatever they do, I'll do whatever I do, and people are of the general idea that people should be able to have the right to be left alone. And that's the right to be left alone sounds weird, but I think that's the best way to phrase it, is that everybody has a right to kind of live their own lives, do their own thing, and get about their own business. And once it comes down to the question of like, but isn't this their business? I think generally speaking, Americans fall on the side of, even if I don't like it, it's like, it's not my problem. And so I think that that argumentation for trans people has always been the strongest, but it also doesn't, you don't need to even do, I mean, obviously humanization helps with that argument, but there's some stuff that's left out there, like some humanization, obviously some medical science, but I think it's always been the strongest and most effective pro-trans argument. And I think it's borne out in the polling, because when Americans are asked about trans people, like polling on trans issues, the vast majority of Americans believe that it takes up too much time in public discourse. So it really does seems like the American position on this generally is, God, man, I just want to grill. Tell me about the she days after.
Christian family groups did was go back to the drawing board.
Which, on one hand, it's not the best position in the world. It'd be better. I guess it'd be all better if they woohoo yaha, at least when it comes to like how they're treated in society. But on the other hand, it's not the worst case scenario. I'd rather society be indifferent than openly hateful, even though much of society is.
And, hire the likes of, maybe Frank Luntz didn't personally involve himself in this one, but like people like Frank Luntz that would go and focus group and test different messages.
Yep.
And they arrived at two key points that were resilient. Americans don't necessarily care about trans issues all that much, but they do care about meritocracy. And what is the one place where there's true meritocracy in the eyes of many Americans? Now, there's, still not perfect meritocracy, but sports. Sports is the one area where if you dominate, if you're good, you're going to dominate. If you're dominant, then you're going to get elevated, right? So they packaged anti-trans sentiment with sports and specifically children's sports, right? And that is where we arrive at 60% of the country, or even larger percentages than that, don't think trans women should be participating in sports with cis women, specifically trans girls, competing in athletic endeavors with cis girls.
Yeah. So that's exactly my point, Haas. And when they laid that trap, first of all, the right wing should acknowledge that was identity politics being played by the right wing. The right wing did the polls, they did the studies, they were looking for something that the American people would hate about the left, about trans people, about LGBTQ people. When you go looking and searching and digging on identity, don't tell me you're not doing identity politics.
No, this is identity politics, and the right does it all the time. Now, listen, here's the thing, okay? You understand this to be a distraction. Like, you recognize that it's a distraction, which is why I don't think either of us are saying that this should be the pivotal, this should play a pivotal role in the top of the line messaging of the Democratic Party, which is that, like, no, trans women have to compete with cis women. I don't think anyone is making that argument at all.
No.
But I think we should, it would serve us both well to openly recognize, and I think you do as well, that this hyper focusing on, trans athletes at the high school level all the way to the collegiate level is a distraction that most Americans might have an opinion on, but don't necessarily care about. It's not a major driver of.
I agree with that too. When people talk about like a mandate about like trans sports issues, I think most people are uncomfortable with the idea of somebody finding out that they're trans tomorrow and then starting an MMA fight against, all the local women, right? I think most people will be uncomfortable with that. Does that really happen? Not really. There's very, very minute examples that have to be dug out. In many of the states where they're banning trans women from participating in sports, there's like one trans woman and like one trans girl in the entirety of the school's education system actively participating in sports. So they end up banning like a single person who's playing like high school volleyball, has no plans past that point. So it's not going to really, whether this policy is one way or the other way, isn't going to have much effect on anyone's lives. And the few people it is going to have an effect on the lives of are going to be the trans women in question who wanted to play certain sports during this time period. And that's going to be like it's going to be maybe like 100 people. I think across the whole country, probably under 1,000 people. And so I don't think that was a big motivating issue, but it's something, at least for the general American public. For the right-wing base, I think so. I didn't think that it made sense that the Republicans spent so much money on ads surrounding this issue. And they did. They pumped a ton of money. Millions and millions and millions of dollars this election. I think one of the last big ad buys, was another few $1 million, was on Harris giving prisoners like trans surgeries. And the way it was pitched, I mean, it did seem crazy. It did seem wild. And I think the purpose was one of two things. And one thing I know for sure it succeeded on. The other I don't. I think one was trying to motivate the Republican base. And I think, ultimately speaking, while it didn't have much effect on independents or Democrats, oh my God, I was going to vote for Harris as a Green New Deal supporter, but now that I know about this trans, et cetera, No, I think that it mostly motivated their base to come out and motivated their base to come out and, you know, support the campaign more. So it was something that riled up the base for them. And I think that it could potentially, and I think this might have been part of their intention, scare people off of voting for the Democrats. Like, whoa, you really want to vote blue this election? You see the crazy stuff they're doing? Now, never mind the fact that during the Trump administration, the same policy around trans prisoners was in place during his admin, during his entire 4 years in office. So, like, Trump oversaw an administration where that was the law of the land. Harris was never president. Putting that aside, there's an idea of scaring people off by saying they're too wacky, they're too quacky, they're too out there. I don't have any evidence that necessarily happened. There's not really many people who say, I didn't vote for Harris because she's too right-wing. There's many more people who say she's too left-wing. And I think that might be the one piece of evidence that might suggest that the she's too much of a wacky lefty could have worked. But I still don't, even if I was to accept that data as suggesting it could have had an impact, I still don't know that it was based on the trans stuff and maybe not something else. Or if that was ultimately a deciding factor in people not voting for her. Because I think a lot of it is if you allow your opponent to establish the narratives around you, if she spent much more time, you know, if she spent more time establishing like a grand vision for the future, and that was dominating the narrative instead of like this crazy trans prisoner stuff, would have probably done better. But I guess a $25,000 first-time house buying down payment was not the new Social Security Act.
Turnout, it's not something that people go out and vote for.
I don't agree.
No. Okay. Well, we can have that argument in a second. I will explain it to you why I don't think
Xander Hall hosted my stream. Oh my, thank you, Xander. Hope you're doing well.
It's a real issue. Part of the reason why is that it's just simply not a real issue because do you know the number of trans athletes nationally?
So I know that
under the collegiate level?
No, it's microscopic.
It's
That's
40.
why.
The number is 40.
Yeah, and so like 20 states, 20 red states passed the law against transgender girls participating in high school sports, and they couldn't name one transgender girl in their state.
Every single second that they used to do that, they could have used to simplify the tax code. They could have used to try to target price gouging or try to make medicines more affordable for the American public. They could have used the time to simplify regulation. Nope. We need to go after these couple dozen girls across the schools
that participated in high school sports.
Yes.
So that's exactly my point.
Like, it's not an issue that even motivates me much because I don't know how much of an effect it really has on the daily lives of most trans people because of how microscopic it is. I think the main effect is really a question of normalization, less a question of actual like sports participation. I don't think most trans people I want to be able to be like, oh, I'm a woman now. I now want to box immediately. And like when these scenarios that are drawn up like that are really far out there, and I think most people would say, yeah, obviously that doesn't feel fair. But we're just so held up over such a small. I mean, even within trans issues, it seems like such a small purview. Thank you for the sub, by the way. I appreciate that. YouTube, that was a YouTube sub, wasn't it? Yes, it was. Bugbird, thank you for the tier 1 sub. I guess you could try to say it's something that could have an effect on suicidality and depression due to if you're not accepted in your peer group, which might be within an extracurricular sports activity. I think that's probably the most convincing argument for me to make me care. And it's why I believe that like high school to middle school level sports should mostly be about developing extracurriculars and socialization anyway.
With agreement.
Even Spencer Cox vetoed the bill in Utah originally, and he actually wrote like a pretty compelling argument as to why he was vetoing it. And governors like Andy Bashar have actually won by higher margins after openly defending trans people in the past in a state like Kentucky, for example.
So look, we start with a point of agreement, which is that the right wing uses a wedge issue to drive a wedge between us. Mm-hmm. They go looking for it, and they do it based on identity politics.
Okay.
So we totally agree on that. We totally agree that it's a microscopic issue that affects almost no one in the country. country. Okay, so when we don't have paid
Also, I don't even
family,
think
we don't
that's
have
true.
health care for everyone. This is bullshit.
I don't even
This
think
is
that's
meant
true.
to distract us.
I don't
we
even think
disagree.
it does
on
impact
how to
people.
react to it.
It does actually impact a lot of cis women. There's more cis women than there are trans women, and there are a lot of young girls that this could technically impact, because now you have bills like the one in Ohio, the penis inspection bills, like the one that they have in Ohio, where like one of the parents from the opposing team could be like, "That's a trans girl, actually," and then they have to literally go and traumatize this like young girl who, in many instances, is not. Statistically, it is highly unlikely that that person is trans to begin with.
So
and,
look,
and
again,
it ends up harming. It ends up harming cis women even more than it ends up harming trans women.
So that's look. I said this exact same point on trigonometry, and their audience hated it. But this is the reality. The reason I make a distinction between high school and professional sports is because in high school, what you're saying is, like Ohio, if I really want to institute this, even though it affects almost no trans or cis girls, if in the world in Ohio as it is,
like
but if I go to implement it, now I got to check everybody's genitals, and there's got to be a genital checker, right? And let me guess, tons of Republican older men are going to volunteer to check the genitals of our high school kids, and I hate it. I don't want it. It's like a groomer pervert factory. And they're going to probably put Jim Jordan in charge of it. No, okay. But when you get to the professional level, you get to the Olympic level, you guys make a giant mistake. You fall right into their trap, and you go, "Oh yeah, sure, they should be able to compete." When the overwhelming majority of the American people do not agree with you, you should let the Olympics and the professional sports decide it on their own. It is not a constitutional right. They have no so-called right to participate in the WNBA. I don't have a right to participate in the NBA. So number one, I don't agree when you go to those extremes. And number two, does it affect elections? Well, we had an overwhelming answer to that in the Trump-Harris contest, because Donald Trump ran the anti-trans ad.
See, this is the thing. Well, I agree that generally speaking, it should be left up to the sports organizations themselves. That I think this should really be outside of the government's purview. I think the government, should support the normalization of trans people into the community, to help them be accepted, etc. It's just not generally like my purview. It's also just not the main issue about like what I care about is like the high levels of suicidality, whatever. Okay. Point is, it's not a big issue for Cenk. But the idea that this was like a big reason we lost, I just don't buy it. The only evidence that people say is they ran hard on it and they won. But just because they ran hard on it doesn't mean they won. I mean, they ran hard on ending the war in Ukraine within 24 hours. Never explained how they were going to do it. Was completely up their own ass on the matter. And now I hear every time I talk to people about the war, it's like, well, Dylan, the mandate is to end the war immediately. It's like, what do you mean that's the mandate? That's not the election isn't, here's all of the issues that this candidate supports. Here's all the issues that the other candidate supports. If you vote for one, you're voting for every single thing that they believe. That's not how elections work. You choose certain things to dominate the campaign. You choose certain things to take a back seat in the campaign. I mean, half of the scandals within the Republican Party around Trump was just based on like what he wanted to take a back seat and what he wanted to take a foreseat. Project 2025, abortion, etc. So I'm not convinced. I need some data, like some exit polling data that says something like, let me give a level of evidence I would take. Some exit polling data suggesting that those who voted considered trans issues significantly when voting. And if we do find a percentage of the population that thinks that, we need to think in which way. Because I imagine if you're trans, it's probably going to be you're more likely to consider it heavily when voting than if you're not trans.
Which was not about hating trans people, although of course it was perceived as such by a lot of people. And so, what it was saying, hey, you guys are giving free surgery to undocumented immigrants who are detainees who are trans. It's too much. It's too, and I agree, it is too much. 98% of Americans agree it is too much, right?
But
so
again,
instead of saying
what we're talking about with these prisoners getting trans surgeries, this is also a Trump era policy. So it's one thing to be like, okay, I agree that if Harris went up there saying, no, I do believe prisoners should like you're putting yourself in a weird position. The defense is Trump also did that. It was a Trump era policy. This is not a focus for my campaign. I want to make sure that the kids know that they're loved and they're safe and that they're free to live in this country just like any other American. And then you move on, right? That's the, like, but this was not, I don't think, like, I still don't know that this was, because when you hear that story, Harris wants to take the prisoners and give them free sex change. It sounds like something Alex Jones would say. It sounds diluted. So I need to be convinced that people heard that and was like, that's convincing. This doesn't just seem like another attack ad spouting nonsense.
Oh no, that you guys are right. That's too much. We did, and of course, sports leagues. That's
because, like, for example, there was a bunch of ads where they had this person representing the Republican congressman. He'd say, "I'm your Republican congressman. You can't get birth control because I made the laws. Let me look at your vagina." Like, that was like the ad. It was really creepy, and it was meant to be creepy. I can't say that, well, the reason it was so close is because of those ads, or the reason we lost is because of those ads. I don't know either way. On one hand, I could blame the ad for us losing, but on the other hand, it could actually be that there were multiple things that made us lost, none of them the ad, and the ad was actually one of the few positive things running for us. So I need to be convinced that this was something that moved people.
It's fine. And of course, no, we're not going to pay for any surgery for a dude who just crossed the border a second ago, right? Instead, you guys go, no, let's fight. Oh, for God's sake. And you dig in. And now we're on a losing ground for no reason at all.
Can you tell me who on the Democratic Party's campaign was actually saying, like, no, we have to issue bottom surgery for undocumented migrants, outside of Kamala Harris saying that in an ACLU questionnaire in 2019 when faced with the question, what will you do for trans people? She just gave that answer, which was a bad answer to give regardless. But was there like a hyper focus from the Democratic Party's campaign that I'm missing?
So Trump starts running the ad, and it instantly jumps to the most effective ad according to Trump's internal numbers and according to Kamala Harris's internal numbers. So at that point,
that's also not true. David Plouffe literally said on the Pod Save America autopsy that they engaged in that the ad actually wasn't all that impactfed at all.
Yeah, bullshit.
Oh, you don't believe it?
Say that. I know it's not true because Future Forward, the biggest PAC that Kamala Harris said that the Charlemagne the God version of that moved the national polls by not the national polls, but for people who viewed it, it moved the numbers by 2.7 points nationally. Okay. That is gigantic. And they said it was the most effective ad Trump had. That's why he then...
But here's the thing that gets me, though. Let's concede the point. I don't know if it's true. I've seen other polling data that suggests that most Americans think we talk about the trans issues just too much, generally speaking. We're very want to grill society. But let's say that it's true. Trump also had the policy about trans prisoners. So it's not a substantive policy difference between Democrats and Republicans. It's not even like something Harris could have really like distanced herself from. Like, what's she going to do? I don't want to do that. Unlike Trump, who's the trans Nazi. Like, would that be your pitch? Would be to be like, no, I don't want to give them the surgery. I don't know if that brings more attention to it, but it's not like a policy difference. It's not, because Trump had the same policy. So when people are like, oh, we need to have the trans stuff take a back seat, in what way? That was stuff that was said on a different election during when she was like Attorney General, I believe. I forget how long ago it was, but it was a while ago. So for me, it's like, what's the recommendation here? They didn't run on it. They brought it up as an issue, even though they have the same policy, fired at her for it, and then it had an effect. So what you do is you nullify the attack in some way by either going after Trump for having the same policy, not just start compromising your positions on trans people. Like, well, because they attacked us for the same policy that they have, we need to outflank them in advance and start saying that we don't care about X, Y, or Z trans issue. I don't know if that's the response. I don't know if that's what Cenk is saying should be the response. But what is the response? Even if we find out this is the case, it's not something that we can get like a substantive policy response to.
double down and quadruple down and wound up spending 20% of his entire ad budget on that ad.
I think
because both sides thought it was the single most effective ad.
I think that's literally the reason why Kamala Harris was able to actually catch up to Donald Trump on not only the economy because of their hyper focus on the trans shit. But here's where
that helped Kamala Harris?
No, I don't. I think that this kind of hyper focus on a marginalized group is not moving people to go out and vote in any meaningful capacity for some of the reasons that you also mentioned, but also because most people don't know who the trans people are. They've never met a trans person. They don't give a shit. They just care about the economy. And when you're hyper focusing on just like
Philip A. Auguste has donated
10 buckaroos.
I will DM or email you about the two. Call into the show. Redeems I did. Hoping to maybe do it when you are in USA. You rule 10 out of
10 out of 10. Happy Native American Heritage Month. And blank America. I'm just going to imagine you said, God bless America. God bless America. Wow. Thank you for the $10, Philip Augustine. I appreciate that. Yeah, you can email me or anyone can contact me at DylanBurnsTV@gmail.com. Thank you very much for the $10 redos. I really do appreciate it. All of the money is going towards my next embed. Anyone want to contribute towards the next Ukraine embed, you can donate at DylanBurns.tv. And you can join site chat with all those beautiful site chatters. Have your messages on screen.
You know, trans people and like dominating trans people or some shit. Even if it's something that they agree with, they're like, after a certain point, there is outrage fatigue. And I think on the trans issue, we like consultants and people who are hyper focused on the media care far more about the effectiveness of ads like that than the actual Americans that went out and voted. And you saw this reality.
We lost, they won.
No, I know, but okay. So
I mean, like, it's so in the real world, they won, we lost. In the,
that's why
in
you
the
have to
world
look at,
of consultants where they look at polling,
that's why you have
they
to
won,
look,
we lost.
That's why you have to look at the broader campaign and what Americans were concerned with and why they voted in the ways that they did. And I think
Haas,
here's where you and I agree on.
So your position is, even though both sides overwhelmingly say that ad was the most effective ad and it moved people and it cost Kamala Harris tons and tons of votes, you disagree.
Yes. And the reason why I disagree with it is because, well, I don't completely disagree with it. And I'll explain to you why. And I think you and I are going to be in agreement with this. I think that the only way that that ad is even remotely sticky when, you know, or even remotely effective, when I still question the legitimacy of how effective the ad was, because there's plenty of examples of people actually defending trans people and then winning by resounding numbers all across the country.
It depends on what issue, though, Haas.
It's because the Democrats they stand for nothing. There is nothing that unites the base of support for the Democratic Party. They are this weird big tent, third way neoliberal party that is constantly pointing to institutional norms and defending this notion of civility. If that is your overarching campaign strategy, then yes, if you stand for nothing, you will, you know, people can turn.
I don't know. The defense of democracy stuff was a big motivator for Democrats to get out there. I don't think that making that a part of the campaign was necessarily wrong. I also think on principle, it's something that's good to stand on. But yeah, we needed a better grand vision, something alternative to what we currently have under the Biden administration, which is recovery era policy. It's oh God, we just had a first time ever pandemic that has sent us on path to a recession. Oh, we're recovering from the recession. We got to do this policy to recover from the recession. Like, even if Biden had the legislative majorities to try to pass the policies that he wanted to pass, like, a lot of these policies were going to take time to kick in. She was going to need to find some way to break with the status quo, which she was just unwilling to make the sacrifices necessary to do. Which was mainly pointing at Joe and saying, I disagree on XYZ.
Turn around and tell others what you actually stand for. They can reframe what you actually stand for and say this is the type of stuff that they care about actually. And therein lies the problem. And I think you and I will agree on this. If it was like a Bernie Sanders style candidacy, if Kamala Harris was like, I want Medicare for all, that Americans are suffering, I want to fix the housing crisis by implementing a federal jobs program backed like, mass housing boom that will actually fix the housing markets in all these big cities and all across the country by building a.
She talked about building like 3 million homes. She didn't talk about how exactly we'd get there. And there was a $25,000 down payment. There were some subsidies and there was a talk of cutting regulations. But I mean, how much do the specifics matter? They certainly didn't matter for Trump.
A shit ton of
I think but that's one way she could have differentiated herself from her opponent. That's for sure.
Houses, no public-private partnership, none of that, no opportunity economy language whatsoever. We're gonna just build, baby, build. Okay, if those are some of the key markers that you're focusing on, this does two things. Okay, this does two things. Number one, Republicans are reactionary, so now they have something that they had to fight against. And if they don't have anything to fight against, they're going to find new wedge issues to make everybody pay attention to, no matter how silly or stupid, right? So now they have to fight against that policy and present why that policy is bad. Now they have to sit there and lie about why giving healthcare to every American is actually going to be devastating because they're backed by their corporate donors. So that's a major issue with the way that the Democratic Party operates in general. And I think you agree with me on this, right? If you give them something to fight for, if you give them something to fight against, they're not going to find new ways find new things that they can just like draw a wedge on. So that's number one.
Okay.
Number two. Okay. The second thing is when you don't have this broad, very obvious policy that you like earnestly are fighting for, that you have been able to communicate to like the majority of the population, like this is my North Star. This is the key defining issue of the Democratic Party this election cycle. Okay, all of a sudden. When you cave and capitulate, the second point I was going to make is when you cave and capitulate the right-wing framing on these issues, the only thing you end up doing is basically admitting that the Republicans are right. And the Democrats have done this on immigration. The Democrats have done this on policing. The Democrats have allowed the Republicans to dominate the space over and over and over again. And they've done it with trans issues as well, or they're doing it now with trans issues as well. Just call it out for what it is. It's a simple distraction. This is not going to put food on your table. This is the way that the Republican Party gets away with being in the pocket of billionaires openly by saying this is the only thing that the Democrats care about. Trans people are your neighbors. They're not your landlord. They're not your boss, and they're not the reason why healthcare is so costly. Okay, they're a tiny group of people in this country that just want to live their same lives. They literally have the same exact class interests as you. They literally also have to pay rent at the end of the day. They also still are harmed by the same shitty job opportunities that people have. They also are worried about not being able to own a home or retire at a reasonable age. The idea that these people are the reasons as to why you're experiencing economic anxieties is silly. Don't ever have this conversation. That's what I say. And that's how I deal with it as someone who is obviously somewhat radical in my pro-trans message overall.
Yeah, but we need to deliver that to the general American public, and we need to be able to make it so Harris can be the one to deliver it. And you need to make it a soundbite that you can pump out in 30 seconds to respond to an ad.
Because
so look,
it's
just simple. Trump had the same policy. It's not my priority as president. I plan to stand up for every American. Something.
Really, it's a nonsensical position that you even recognize as nonsense.
So let me start with the agreement and move to the disagreement. So the agreement is super important here because you're right. And this ad is, in a sense, the perfect symbol of, in my experience, you only agree with half of this, but the merger of what is wrong with the Democratic Party's corporate wing and the radical left wing. You switch them together. We'll get to labels in a minute. Okay, so you smush them together and you have this ad, and this ad helped Trump win and Kamala Harris lose. Why are you smushing them together? For the exact reason that you explained, Haas. Because if they were like Bernie Sanders and they were economic populists, Bernie can say, why are we talking about that issue? We should be doing higher minimum wage and we should be doing universal health care, et cetera. And then now we're having a real conversation about things that affect people's lives. And Kamala Harris can't do that because she's too busy pleasing the donor class, right?
Tony West. Shouts out to my man, Tony West.
And who cost us the election more, that ad or Tony West? Not close. Tony West. Okay, so Tony West, who's the Uber executive, that's her, brother-in-law, told her, oh, you know what? You're too tough on corporations. Instead, you should give them a big bear hug. Go out there and put out the 90 corporate CEOs.
I still can't believe that they thought it was smart to have J.B. Pritzker speak at the Democratic National Convention and brag about being a billionaire when you're running against basically God's incarnation of greed.
Signed a letter saying you're awesome and that you'll work for corporations and do everything that they want. Bring in Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney pulled a 13%. Liz Cheney is one of the most unpopular people. Progressive Data for Progress did a poll that showed the more she campaigned with Liz Cheney, the more she lost support. She lost enthusiasm. It was a super dumb idea. And that cost us more than this ad did. This whole idea of, oh my God, I love big business and I'll do everything big business tells me. Look at Mark Cuban. He's on every cable channel telling you that I will do whatever the business interests want. It's the worst idea in the world, especially when you're running against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's going, hey, here's a billionaire, Elon Musk. I'm just going to give the government to him. And here's another billionaire, Miriam Adelson, and I'm going to give foreign policy to her. And here's Tim Mellon, weirdo guy who inherited all of his money and douchebag who wants tax cuts because he's just rich and earned nothing in his life. And I'm going to give him tax cuts for the rich, right? But they never make that case because they're...
Look, actually, the more I think about it, if she wanted to run on the idea of like, look, even Republicans don't want to vote for Republicans, I don't think that's a bad pitch. But it's a situation where you can't always choose your allies. I'm sure if she got her pick of the litter and got to choose whichever Republican anywhere that is most popular to be with her, like, I'd be like, yeah, I want Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger should be campaigning with me every other day. He should come out, say a few catchphrases, say that it's all for freedom, and it'd be great. Because who doesn't like Arnold Schwarzenegger, even if he was, the Republican governor of California, didn't do really a tremendous job, right? She'll be back to the White House. You can do so much with that. But you don't always get to choose your allies. And Liz Cheney is an example of that. Adam Kissinger and Liz Cheney are not the most popular Republicans. If you got to choose, like, yeah, some more celebrity style Republican would probably be much more useful. Doesn't help that there's not really a lot of like a really popular pick of the litter over there.
Corporate douchebags. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, all of Democratic leadership. And so these guys are never going to win another general election. The American people hate them. They should hate them. Okay. And so what the right wing doesn't understand is both the populist left and what they call the woke left, I call radical left or whatever. We'll figure out the label in a minute. But in this case, you're on the right side. You say f- the corporate interests, the donors, right? So, and the populist right agrees with that. So that's actually an interesting point that we should come back to, a point of agreement we should come back to. But the part where we disagree, Haas, is you say, well, if they're digging in on a wedge issue, ignore it. But Kamala Harris literally did that. They had a giant debate about whether to address it or not.
No.
They even pulled ads where they addressed it.
You're misunderstanding me.
And they decided, oh, let's not address it.
You're
And
wrong.
It was a mistake.
They literally also, they did this with immigration especially. Like, they were like, we're not going to ignore it. We're just going to get ahead of it. And what they did with immigration, they're going to do with trans issues next election cycle. And it's the same principle over and over again. It makes you look like a hypocrite, and it makes you look like the Republicans were right all along. And the only thing it does is prime your base into conceding and agreeing with the Republican framing on an issue. If
so
there
what
was
do you do instead? What I say is I delineate. So when you say, hey, Andy Bashir runs against it, but which issue? So if you're talking about constitutional rights, you fight for trans rights 100%. You're talking about military, you fight 100%. I'd fight on bathrooms. I'd fight on high school. But I draw the line on sports. I draw professional sports.
We
I
will
draw
fight in the bathrooms. We will fight in the classrooms. We will fight on the beaches. We will. Sorry.
Line on giving free surgeries.
That's the thing.
Then you can defend your
position. Yeah, but that wasn't their position. That wasn't Harris's position. She wasn't out there like, yay, free surgeries. This was something they dug up from a while ago that Trump also had as his policy. So it's like, what's his policy? Cenk's policy recommendation isn't really like campaign recommendation at all. He needs to say what to do to counter it. Because, like, unless you could have a time machine once the campaign started and you went back 5-6 years in advance to denounce the policy that Trump would also have, then, like, you can only deal with it once, you know, after the fact that she already publicly endorsed it.
Position and get back to where the great majority of American people agree with you.
You want to know why there's no reason to draw any of these lines? Because Kamala Harris did actually bring this up, which I thought was like, especially because like she didn't have a clear or consistent position on this at all. It was like it was left out there in the dark. But like Trump did the same thing as well for undocumented migrants.
Say that I know.
Man, it took so long. It took so long for us to get there, but we're an hour in, finally there.
Like it's just like it's a thing that nobody gives a shit about until people are primed into caring about it. That's my point. It's been happening for a very long time for prisoners that want to get this component of healthcare, and nobody technically gives a shit about it. It's already like a incredibly tiny, minuscule, marginal percentage. So it doesn't matter. Like it ultimately doesn't matter. I'm saying if the Democrats had something if Democrats had, but it didn't, and I'll get to that in a second. If Democrats had something that they were fighting for, nobody would give a shit about this. That's the point.
Yeah, but then
you brought up Bernie Sanders and you said, oh, healthcare, universal healthcare. Bernie Sanders has also said trans rights are human rights. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like...
But that's the difference between 2016 and 2020.
It's not like Bernie
Sanders. Saying trans rights or human rights are different than... Okay, when somebody says trans rights or human rights, I think that people are going to fill in their mind whatever they think those rights are. If you're on the fringe of the right or you're on the hard right, then you might fill that in with, it's a right to go in a bathroom and go after my little girl. If you're maybe not that, you could be like, oh, their right to freedom of assembly. Freedom of, if you're on the left, it'd probably be stuff like, you know, their right to, you know, go to the bathroom unabated, stuff like that. But it depends on what you fill in their head. But when people think of rights, they're not going to default on the bad stuff. They're going to default on the good stuff. Because, like, our whole republic is based upon rights from the government. We talk a lot about, like, rights to the government of stuff the government needs to give you. But the main framing of the country was the idea that you have these rights away from the government.
It's not like Bernie Sanders himself is saying, like, yeah, trans people, we got to cut them out of this bargain.
Trans people, you guys are just making that up.
No,
but in Haas, when you frame it that way, you get all these crazy
Republicans
people
are
online.
saying that. Republicans are saying that.
No, I know, but we're not saying that. But
no,
you get all these crazy people online who are like, oh my God, if you don't agree to free surgeries for every trans person on planet Earth, you're a Nazi. Well, you know those people exist, and those people, that is the radical left, and they are stupid, and they do cost us elections.
No, you're hyper focusing, and I've had this conversation privately with you many times over. You are hyper focusing on people that are in your replies on Twitter, and because
so you agree with me, that radical left is bullshit,
all you interact,
stupid dumbasses. Do you agree?
There are a million people that are both in your replies that have also gotten mad at me as well, time and time again, on specific issues, maybe ones that even pertain to trans rights. Okay, it literally doesn't matter. People get very passionate, understanding. I'm very understanding.
Shocking agreement. I agree. There's 13 douchebags online. That's what I said from day one.
I know, but why the would you ever hyper focus on people like that?
Look, no. So you might be doing the right thing. Hold on.
You're doing the Bill Maher thing. You're demanding that there needs to be a sister
bullshit.
No, you're doing the sister soldier moment.
No, bullshit.
No, you're trying to.
So the minute we said the most reasonable things on earth, which you now agree with apparently, then what happened? It wasn't just the 13 douchebags online. And by the way, everybody said, no, those 13 douchebags represent all the left. You're not on the left anymore because the 13 douchebags control the left. And then what happened next? Then Majority Report jumped in, and Lance from the Serfs, and all the other little dirtbags jumped in, and they were like, container, turning right.
Whoa, my goodness. Majority Report or scumbags? The Serf or scumbags? My God, I missed something. Let me pay more attention.
the most reasonable things on earth, which you now agree with, apparently, then what happened? It wasn't just the 13 douchebags.
By the way, this is the best time for the left to tear each other up. Right after the election.
Online.
And
by the way, everybody said, no, those 13 douchebags represent all the left. You're not on the left anymore because the 13 douchebags control the left. And then what happened next?
What are these comments in the corner? What are these comments? Look at the difference between Cenk's anger for the left
And by
versus
the way,
right.
everybody said, no, those 13
That's why people perceive him as an enemy to us.
douchebags represent all the left. You're not on the left anymore because the 13
To
douchebags
be clear, Cenk is an ally. Please don't harass him. Just wild that that's necessary.
control the left. And then what happened next? Then Majority Report jumped in and
Guess what? People just disagree. People can disagree.
douchebags control the left. And then what happened next? Then Majority Report jumped in and Lance from the Serfs and all the other little dirtbags jumped in and they were like, no, Cenk and Anna are turning right. The 13 douchebags are right. We need to protect every trans person should get free surgery.
We got
even in China. Even though we have nothing to do with China. We hate them. They're Nazis.
You got to, okay.
I mean, I'm 100% right. Every dirtbag show did it.
You got to calm
Every
down.
dirtbag show did it. Tell me I'm wrong.
This is reframing an issue that is now we've moved away from the electoral consequences of a trans ad to your own personal anger and frustration that you have with left-wing media online. We are
so do you agree left-wing media online? Those guys that I listed are full of shit.
I have
and in a tiny stupid
he's like a pit bull. He grabs on. He ain't letting go, man.
Minority?
I have disagreements
like
with everyone in this space, but there's a reason why seemingly I don't catch the same amount of strays that you do because I don't hyper focus.
I can tell you why.
I don't hyper focus. What do you think it is?
They think you're hot, young. I don't mean attractive. God bless on that. Okay. I'm also obviously hot. I mean, as in they think, oh, the young people watch Hasan. He's cool. And you give the thing of like, oh, no, trans people are right on everything, right? You don't come out and make the distinctions that Anna and I made. Okay. So they think, oh, no, he's good. He's extreme as we are.
I think
he's woke left. Yay, extremeness.
I think the reason, first of all, you're.
Okay. By the way, Majority Report.
Well, come on. Who would call Hasan an extremist? Come on.
All of you guys, you better attack him. He apparently agrees with me. Okay, you better attack him.
I don't.
You're not going to attack him, are you?
You're hyper personalizing this into like criticisms that you've received.
Cenk, you know what it is? Cenk has the same energy that Alex Jones does when he gets into it. Not to say that they lied about the same things, you know, but it's the same energy. It's the same kind of, almost even like the same mannerisms in some ways, like the constant readjustments.
Punches you in the face 12 times and you go, what? Why are you hyper-personalizing it?
Because
just because I called you a Nazi, now it's personal to you?
Because myself, you, Majority Report.
But I never changed my policy. I never changed my policy.
All of this is in
Lance didn't get a shout out. Oof, Surfs L. Terrible.
Consequential in the grand scheme of things. And whenever there's like drama, for example, I've been getting attacked mercilessly by my former podcast co-host that has been actively trying to deplatform me for the past 2 months because he thinks that, or he's claiming that I am creating a space that is anti-Semitic. The way I've dealt with that, for the most part, is by just actively ignoring it leading up to the election because I was like, this is some silly nonsense. And in the aftermath, I covered some of the broader points and I moved on. If you extend the conflict that way, instead of trying to find a reasonable middle ground, and even show humility in a certain, I don't agree. Even show humility instead of saying I'm right, there's never going to be any sort of real solidarity.
Show humility to you, a bunch of idiots who are wrong.
Because I
like what does humility mean? Like, oh, maybe
I'm sorry, but these two people are family. They are. I can see the blood that runs through their veins.
right about your dumb opinion that's going to cost us this election. Maybe you're right about your dumb opinion that gets the majority of the country to hate us when our economic positions are overwhelmingly popular. Maybe you making us intensely unpopular when we should be focusing on universal health care, higher wages, paid family leave. But you idiots hate policy. All you want is identity politic bullshit, and you think that drives ratings, and you want me to show humility to those morons? None.
Let's
Zero.
have a meta conversation really quickly about the ways in which branding works online. I am of this mindset that every single person is far too busy and far too self-involved to pay attention to the more nuanced conversations that others are having on any particular issue. This is why...
Dylan, you're a war pervert, and you don't really care about Ukraine because you interviewed those Ukrainians about what they thought of me. I appreciate Hasan as a voice of nuance and care to the... He looks into the eyes of others, and he tries to see who they really are.
Even when there is like a faucet of smears that I am attacked with clips that are completely out of context.
So many pep smears.
I address it and I move on. Okay? I address it and I move on, and I come at this conversation with an understanding that most people are not fully aware of what my analysis is on any particular matter. This has happened in the past with, me purchasing a house where people were made a big deal about it. It's okay. And I, at that same, even back then, I said, look, people are angry. People are frustrated with their position in society. People are frustrated with a lack of opportunity. And in that process, when they see a rich asshole like myself, buy a house, they're going to get mad at me. And there's a healthy amount of anger towards wealthy people there that I agree with as well. I think that they're misdirecting their anger at the wrong person.
Yeah, they need to focus on the other rich people.
But
I agree.
Ultimately, I move on. If I spend every waking moment covering...
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be an ass. It's just like, look, concentrate on the other rich people. Don't concentrate on me. It's not a self-serving argument at all.
The anger that I'm receiving. And if I spend every waking moment covering things that are out of context, then I'm not going to be able to, I'm just going to be that. I'm going to be the person who is responding to drama all the time when I feel like there are far larger, more consequential issues at play.
Now, let me take the other side on the meta conversation.
Hyperfixating on not only a very small sliver of society that is, in your honest opinion, has been openly targeted as the major reason as to why people are angry, is offering legitimacy to the right-wing position. I think there's a more effective way of communicating that, and it's something that I do on a regular basis, which is, this is a simple distraction. You don't care about this, and the people that do hyperfixate on this are weird and gross. Leave people alone. Let people live. These people are your neighbors, and they and yourself are more aligned on class issues in more meaningful ways than you think. Stop hating on people that you don't understand. Mind your own damn business. Tim Walz does a fantastic job with this, and Andy Bashar has done a fantastic job with this. They're both very popular governors that you like as well.
But that's literally my position. All right, so listen.
But the reason why people don't think that that's your position is because people see the clips. People see clips out of context.
I know, but what do? They see clips on douchebag shows who are purposely misrepresenting our position.
Yeah, go back. Straight back to him. Go after Lance. Tear him in half. Tear him all half. Go get Sam Cedar. Go get the Vanguard podcast. Draw and quarter them all. He's going to be the Augusto Pinochet of the left. He's going to throw us all out of helicopters.
And pretending that we're against all trans rights. So, so your position to that is surrender, okay? And no, I never surrender. So look, and here, let me explain why, though. Why do I think that's surrender?
You just talk so goofy, man. You talk so goofy. A concession is surrender, and I never surrender, for I am Cenk. I am of the Young Turk clan. Just the way he talks, man, is great.
Because we've tried this, Haas. So let's on that meta conversation. So we tried it with Trump. So Young Turks viewers will remember in the beginning when he first started running in 2015, I thought he was so illegitimate that he was doing it as a con, which by the way turned out to be wrong.
Who?
Trump. And we blurred out his face. First we didn't show him, then we blurred out his face, and then eventually we gave up and started showing who he was. Ignoring the beast never works. So then
they censored Trump's face on the Young Turks. It's kind of goofy. That is goofy, actually. What exactly was that going to accomplish? What was the goal there? I understand, like, doing that with like a school shooter. You want to deny him the pleasure that they wanted. Maybe they treated Trump like he was a school shooter for his first like few months in the campaign.
I remember when.
But these people are not the beast.
Hold on, let me finish the point. When Dave Rubin.
But yeah, no, I agree. Subs and soda feels performative.
Came out and started lying, 100% lies, lie after lie after lie. We ignored it because we're like, what? That's mental, right? But then the lies started to take root because he goes on Joe Rogan and.
I'm gonna leave this playing. I'm gonna go use the bathroom quick.
Joe Rogan's like, oh, really? Tell me more. Oh, my God. Dave Rubin's so right. And then he went on like 100 shows. And so then Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire comes up. More gigantic. And Crowder comes up. And we're like, oh, these are pimples on our ass. Who cares about Shapiro? He's so small. Crowder, who cares? He's tiny. He's microscopic. Who cares, right? And we didn't address them. And you know what happened? They festered and festered and festered. And next thing you know, Dave Rubin, everybody started to think, oh, I wonder if he's right about the Young Turks and they have some evil, nefarious purpose or something. Then we started fighting back and we crushed that. Now he's a laughing stock. So whenever anybody thinks of Dave Rubin, they're like, oh, yeah, he's that dumb guy, right?
Yeah, but that's not because of you. That's also because of Majority Report, ironically enough. And people like myself.
I know. When we fight back, everybody gets their feelings.
The point is, it's not...
And
it's
so,
not just
and then it's
you.
never us. We never get any credit. We only get discredit.
The reason why I'm bringing up Majority Report and myself in this process is because, like, ultimately, right, we are all aligned on virtually every single issue. So in many respects, you feel chastised individually. You feel like you've been outcast by the left or whatever, like the media representation of the left is.
They're not the left. I'm the left.
Okay.
No, 100%. And you agree with that.
Okay. Please, just listen.
No, because we have to.
But you're not the singular force.
The idiots are making everyone think they are the left. They're like, we're the left. We're the real left. Okay, we are super extreme. We want free surgeries for every criminal. Yes, we're the left. And oh, Nazi. And Haas, what happens? People think they are the left. So if you say you're right, Cenk, those are the extreme idiot left.
I don't
and
think
you
that
are
they're
the left,
extreme,
then I'm okay.
No, I don't think those are the extreme idiot left. I think that there is going to be.
By the way, can I just say that Cenk puts himself in the extreme idiot left category? He kind of stumbles into it just based on reactive populism. For example, like when Biden did the long-range strike decision, and he's like, wow, why would Biden do such a thing just to please the neocons and the war machine? It's just like, nobody on the left or the right really supports it. He's on his own planet. It's just a populist type of, I'm against the war machine and I am not going to be a gear in the machine of blood. It's no, okay, what caused this? Why did Biden move off this position? What about the North Korean troop deployments? Is that something that should be disincentivized and deterred? I believe it is. What have the Russians been doing to Ukraine for 3 years prior? But his just reaction to it was just like populist idiocy. So I think, and that to me is a problem of the left. Just while coming and just saying the populist thing can have good short-term effects for your movement, I think it has bad long-term effects for the educational mental health of the nation. If it's just like screaming towards the crowd with no thought put into it. Because that's what it was. It was reactive populism. It'd be one thing if he said, this is why I think it substantially increased the threat of World War III enough to disincentivize us from going forward with the tactical benefits during this crucial stage of the war when we're going towards a possible settlement in early January. But no, there wasn't any of that. It was just, I didn't like it. Shallow. Sorry, of course. In my stream, I got to talk about Ukraine at some point, no? You missed the best part, Dylan. Rewind. What did I miss? You got to be more specific.
Be a diversity of thought in any issue that people have, and it's a matter of who you make your enemies in the finite amount of time that we have on the space, the finite amount
how do you not include that an Asian army has invaded Europe for the first time since what, like the Mongols? And we're just supposed to be like, meh. Meh. Like it deserves some response, no? I guess maybe you can include the Indians, but they're not really like its own army. They're like an expeditionary, whatever.
Time
I'm thinking of World War I.
That we have, living on planet Earth. It's about the economy of time and utilizing it appropriately. I don't spend any time. I do not spend any time.
Just let him attack you and sit there and don't correct anything. Let all the lies fester.
Yes.
Wait, you didn't let me finish. So Dave Rubin, now he's a laughingstock. Then Jimmy Doran comes in
because Dave Rubin is a right winger. Yeah. Majority Report is not.
So you're saying
you are in agreement with the Majority Report.
No. Hold on. Let me finish the thought. Let me finish the thought. So on Jimmy Dore, he comes in and goes, "Oh, they're paid by Nancy Pelosi. They're paid by the CIA." Lunatic, right? And so we let it fester. We let it fester. Finally, we're like, "Get this out of here." And we tell the people truth and we crush him. Now he's a joke on the internet, right? So we go on. And anytime we don't fight, it festers. Anytime we do fight, we crush them and we move the on, and nobody thinks Jimmy Dore's the left anymore. Nobody thinks Dave Rubin's the left anymore. And so now these guys come and attack us going, "Yeah, we're the real left, we're the real left."
There's a
and you're saying, no, don't crush them. Just let them fester and people pretend that they're the real left. No, we don't do that. If you're going to say stupid shit and you're going to try to punch us in the face, we're going to punch you back, not on our behalf, on behalf of Democratic voters who you are lying about. The Democratic voters do not agree with you. They agree with us. So,
by the way, if that's the case, what do the Democrats overwhelmingly support Ukraine? It's like 70 to 80% of Democrats want to continue aid to Ukraine. So I'm just saying, if you want to stand up for the party, Cenk, you got to put on the blue and yellow. Okay? Look, I'm not saying you need to go out there and sing Batko Nash Bandera, but, just, a few Slavo-Ukrainians would be fine.
Day for you, and I'm not going to let you lie and pretend the Democratic voters are on your side, because you're a liar and they're not on your side. Do you agree that the Democratic voters are on my side?
I don't care what the Democratic voters are on, whichever side they're on right now. We've lost the plot. Okay.
No,
we've completely lost the plot, because now the conversation is about like the serfs or Majority Report, and I think that's a completely and utterly unproductive conversation to have.
Your strategy is when grifters on the left attack you, whether it's Rubin, I think Cedar's a grifter.
I disagree.
Okay.
Whoa, really? You think Sam Cedar's a grifter? Why would he say that? Sam Cedar's been doing like radio broadcasting since like forever, man. I was in the single digits when he started. A grifter. That implies he doesn't believe anything. It's just all for money and like attention or whatever. Why? Why would he be a grifter? Considering they host a lot of like, I'm just gonna be blunt, nerds, okay, on like specific policy issues. Like if you're just a grifter, just do constant drama content. And they do cover other people, but like wanting views is not the same as being a grifter. That's an accusation, Cenk. You gotta back that up. You can't just, remove the safety, start blasting, and then not have anything to back it up.
Okay. Oh, by the way, so now all of a sudden you're defending Cedar. When he calls me a grifter, you don't defend.
Wait, so we called him a grifter. So they're both, the best case scenario, they're both grifters, okay? Look, I will be the moderate, I'll be the centrist. Both Sam Cedar and Cenk are grifters.
Well, I've never heard him call you a grifter.
He's called me every name in the book.
Okay.
He's a low rent grifter.
Stop.
Okay, no, I'll tell you. I'll out him right now. When we were in Vegas together, when we were in the same network, he starts attacking Jimmy Dore. And I say, hey, cut this shit out. I agree with you, not Jimmy. but you're attacking him in a way that is over the top and totally unnecessary and counterproductive. And
Oh my God, you're making me like him more. He went after Jimmy Dore in a way that was overbearing and too much. What's the problem? It's Jimmy Dore. What do you mean? Like, I'm sorry. You can't. Like, I'm sure if you could have found any other name in the space, maybe you could have. But it's Jimmy Dore, the dude who regularly lies about war crimes and republishes propaganda of bloodthirsty regimes on the warpath.
you know what Sam said to me? Sam said, oh, well, he has a bigger audience than me. So if I do that, I'm going to siphon off of his audience. You know why I siphon off? Oh, because I am right and he is wrong. And the audience deserves to hear my truth. So he's doing the same thing to us.
Agree. But you,
that's not even grifting. And by the way, okay, that's called content creation in this space. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Cenk does it. Hasan does it. I do it. Destiny does it. Everybody does it. Big Star says something you think is stupid and you can knock down. You can shoot that down. Of course you're going to go and shoot it down. That's why Hasan tried to debate that Christian Watson guy. Not Christian Watson. Whatever his name was. That the transphobe dude who came on his stream. So why Cenk Uygur wants to debate all these different guys. That's why people do response video after response video. Doesn't make him a grifter. It means he understands how the game works, and he understands that if you want to get big views, you got to get big stars, you got to get big names in your titles. And that means talking about stuff that includes them. That isn't grifting to acknowledge what the market is, you know? Is it grifting if I change the color or design on my soda can I'm selling in order to adhere to the market? It'd be one thing if Sam was going after Jimmy not at all because he disagrees with him or they had difference of opinion, but entirely just because Jimmy is bigger and I want his viewers. But if it's Jimmy's bigger, I think he's spreading nonsense and I want his viewers, that doesn't necessarily mean it's grifting. Who doesn't want to grow? Who wants to make content on the internet to be watched by nobody, right? Like, oh, I try my best. Like, when I make my journalistic content for my main channel on Dylan Burns TV, I do it for the historical record. Of course, yeah, to some extent, but who wouldn't want their stuff, including mine, to be watched? Everybody wants their stuff to be watched. That's not grifting. Grifting would be like, I don't really care what Jimmy thinks. I don't really know what he thinks. Screw what he thinks. I want that money, baby. I want that Jimmy Dore money. So I'm just going to respond. That would be grifting, not I disagree with him, he disagrees with me, I'm going to make a video about him because then I'll get a lot of views. That's not grifting. You could say that's view hungry, maybe, at best.
You agree with him.
And I told him not to do it.
But you agree with him that Jimmy Dore is
No, this was pre-Jimmy going full right-wing, full lunatic,
yeah.
Okay,
but
okay, wait, let me throw this out there. Jimmy Dore has always been kind of a lunatic. Jimmy Dore has always had some wacky ideas. Go back to his 2016 conversation about the Supreme Court. Like, he was just completely disregarding the idea that things can get worse, which is a big issue within left-wing spaces, is the inability to realize how bad things can get.
That particular issue they were debating about, I agreed with Sam and not Jimmy. I don't mind him saying, hey, I don't agree with Jimmy. What I minded is him saying, oh, Jimmy is terrible and bad intent and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
but brother, he hadn't even done that yet.
He disagrees with Jimmy Dore on this whichever
he
issue.
Did it with
what
bad
was it
intent,
on?
Haas.
What was it on?
He says, I don't even remember. It's irrelevant. What he says is he literally told me, I try to take other people's audience by getting into their basically next to their algorithm, right? So if you've got a guy like that who has bad intent, you're saying if you deem him right wing, you should attack him. But if you deem him left wing, you should let him lie about you. You should let him call you every name in the book.
No.
You should let him pretend he represents the left when he doesn't represent the left. He doesn't represent Democrats. You should let him trick people into thinking that the Democrats are super unpopular, that the left wing is super unpopular. No, I'm not going to let him trick people into thinking that.
Okay, listen, Sam Cedar or any number of different left-wing content creators have no bearing on the actual policies that the Republican right are implementing. No, they don't. They don't.
Why did Kamala
You're out of your mind.
Why did Kamala Harris in 2019 say on tape that transgender detainees should get surgery if they're undocumented immigrants? She said it because there was hold on, Haas, let me finish. Because there was enormous pressure. There was enormous pressure.
Oh, it was during the 2019 primary. That makes sense.
from the radical left to say, oh yeah, you got to be pro transgender detainee immigrant surgery. You have to, otherwise you're not left enough. And she's an idiot. She doesn't have any thoughts in her head. She was like, okay, I'll adopt that position. And it was because of the extreme left that she adopted that position because she's an empty vessel.
You are literally attributing the consistent thing that you also agree that Kamala Harris is a bad politician with bad instincts and did not have a good way to communicate what she would have done differently for trans people, okay, to Majority Report and any number of different like extreme leftist outlets that literally get a fraction of the views that I get in this regard. Like, no disrespect to them, but like all of us combined do not have the same motion. You're talking about the special interest
groups. You never
groups.
fight them, so nobody knows. Everybody thinks you're extreme left. Everybody thinks that you're the woke left extraordinaire.
Wait, Sam Cedar's extreme left, but Hasan isn't? Wait, that's the bitch? Really? Nah, come on.
Right? So like, and why do they think that? Apparently you don't agree. But they think that because you don't actually ever fight on this issue. You don't delineate.
The reality is the way that people are presented by others ends up changing the perception that they have in the minds of a lot of people that are they're simply just not paying attention. I come at it from a much more understanding point of view, and I understand that there is a large tent of people with a diversity of different opinions. And there are moments where I will yell at a chatter, but outside of that, in terms of the finite amount of time we have spending, I find it more productive to spend it focusing on the actual people who hold the levers of power rather than people who I'm aligned with almost entirely, whether it be yourself with some very major disagreements or even Sam Cedar and the like.
But
that's
Haas, you're making it sound like
presenting
we
yourself,
just have a difference of agreement.
No, presenting yourself as
but we don't
an intellectual,
Haas.
presenting yourself as the opposite of these people, okay, serves no purpose. It just only makes you look like you're the moderate voice in here and they're the extreme voices and whatever.
That's true, though.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just make your argument and move on and focus on the things that do matter.
Say the same thing to them because they're the ones because intent matters, Haas. Intent matters. Look, you know how many people disagree with me in Young Turks hosts? So I had this giant same exact debate we were having about the trans ad with Jordan Yule and with Jules Sulzdev. This is the one time I get it wrong, Jules. I love those guys. Francesca's in our network. I disagree with them all the time. We have the debates on air. There's nothing wrong with those debates. That's wonderful. No problem at all. Where I draw the line is bad intent.
Yeah, when I have disagreements with any number of different people on any other networks, I say ultimately I don't care. We are aligned in this fight. We care about protecting undocumented immigrants. We care about protecting trans people, and I'm not going to pay too much attention to this because ultimately I don't give a shit if there are disagreements. I have disagreements with my friends all the time. Ultimately, if I think someone is is almost entirely aligned with me on a lot of these key issues, then I see no reason.
And they call you a Nazi and a grifter. You say, okay,
it doesn't matter. People call me. Yes. Okay, people call me all of it.
Okay,
I think it's ridiculous but if it's coming from the right,
Haas,
if it's coming from the right, then you can use that as an opportunity to show
politics.
why they're ridiculous.
No, but let's get back to politics. So why does anybody think we're extreme, right? Why does anybody think the left is extreme? Because they have a whole bunch of hosts that they could point to and thought leaders and people online.
Yeah, myself included.
Right, that they point to and they go, look at these extreme positions that they have. So that taints the rest of the left. And that is counterproductive, it's unfair, and it's inaccurate. So stop pretending the most extreme positions are the most left-wing positions. They are not. They're the least representative of the left.
I think hyper-focusing on what the right is considering to be the most extreme positions is only giving it more air for no reason. This is why I said this is the sister soldier.
The independents decide the elections.
This is why
you're losing that battle.
This is why I said this is a sister soldier moment where you're like identifying someone to your left that is more extreme than you to show everybody how moderate you are. And there's no reason to do
show
that.
them how moderate Democratic voters are.
There's no
because
reason.
they brainwash
There's no
people
reason to
into
do
thinking that Democratic voters are lunatics who, by the way, okay, let's argue this. They say that no crime exists.
There's no reason to do that.
Crime is great.
There's no reason to do that.
Crime is wonderful.
You want to know why there's no reason to do that? Donald Trump is president. You never see Republicans do.
Also, what is Hasan's position on shoplifting? What is Hasan's position on shoplifting? Because this might be a big area of disagreement. Because I know that Cenk knows that working class people really don't like crime. And whether or not crime has generally gone down, which is true, especially violent crime, which is great. It's great for a society. Even though it did go back up during the COVID period for economic reasons, societal reasons. What about Hasan's position on shoplifting? Because if I remember correctly, like, he was okay with, like, shoplifting. Or at least he was like, well, you know, I'm not going to get angry because these businesses can get it covered, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm sure, like, that position, if Cenk heard that position, he would call it an extreme left position. If I remember correctly. Am I misconstruing Hasan's old position on shoplifting? Am I misremembering? Am I lying? Am I slandering? He thinks people shouldn't go to jail over it. Okay, so what does he think should happen if somebody shoplifts? Because somebody shoplifts, right? You go out and you steal. Like, I don't want to lock up somebody going to steal some bread. But if you go in and steal 20
Needle
iPhones.
Max got a tier 4 subscription.
You can go steal 20 iPhones. I'm not going to be like, oh, this poor soul. No. Get out of here. Get out of here. I've seen stores in my neighborhood, or at least my father's neighborhood up in Hagerstown, Maryland, get shut down due to the stealing and the thieving because it just wasn't worth it. And they, like, hired security and it didn't really work, and it's not good. Also, Needle, thank you so much for the tier 4. My goodness, you went straight to tier 4. You joined the top echelons of my society. You're gonna be going to my like secretive meetings with the rest of the deep state people. Thank you. No problem, man. I was tier 2 before. My God. Initiate upgrade. Point is, I think that if Cenk heard this, he would consider this an extremist position, and I'd like to hear them go back and forth over.
Do that. Even
because if people don't think there's any consequence, they will shoplift, and they will shoplift. There has to be some deterrence.
if they do actually disagree, it doesn't matter. There's no reason. There's no reason to ever turn around and be like, I disagree with these people.
You're 100% wrong on this. So let's look at California. So you say it doesn't matter.
I gotta pee real quick. You can keep going. We'll talk about crime in a second. Go ahead.
Okay.
I gotta pee.
All right. So look, guys. I mean, I want to respond to him, so I want to wait till he gets back. But so look, I'll say it this way. Number one, the thing Haas is right about is there's so much more that we agree on than we disagree on. And that is why I get mad when people pretend that the disagreements are the only things that matter. So I'm not the one pretending that. The people that attacked us said, how dare you disagree? How dare you? That is not a sanctioned disagreement, okay? So now you
wait, what are these like little pointers?
The people that attacked us said, how dare you disagree? How dare you? That is
when you punch left, you are shielding the right by proxy.
Not a
and he's the official Hasanabi state-approved opinions.
Sanctioned disagreement, okay? So now you have to fall back in line and you have to start calling women this and that, and you have to say that trans people should be getting the free surgeries and be able to play in professional sports. And if you don't, you're not really on the left. And in fact, Cenk, I get this argument all the time. You have the biggest left-wing network, so you have a responsibility to agree with us. But what the f does that mean? I don't have a responsibility to agree with you. No, I have a responsibility to represent my audience. I have a responsibility to represent the left in an accurate way and to represent Democrats in an accurate way. I don't have a responsibility.
You can tell the truth.
To take the most extreme positions because somebody decided that they, having not voted on it at all, representing the most tiny sliver of Democratic voters, says, no, that is the left-wing position. Well, when you say that and you shut off debate, well, then you're doing a massive disservice to the left, not to the right. So look, at any time you go on Young Turks, you'll see disagreement all the time. There's nothing wrong with disagreement. There's something wrong with saying that if you don't have the most extreme position, that you're not really on the left and you're a right-wing grifter and blah, 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 blah. So let's do crime. Did crime have, you and I had a huge debate about it, and you thought it's not going to affect elections, and it obviously did affect elections, Haas. So I mean, here in California, first of all, Donald Trump picked up 10 counties overall. He closed the gap between Kamala Harris and himself massively in California. George Gascon lost 60-40. The mayor of London Breed, mayor of San Francisco, lost overwhelmingly. The mayor of Oakland got recalled 65-35. Prop 36 passed with a 70% approval. So the Democratic voters of California said, yes, crime is real. And yes, we hate it and do not want more crime. We want less crime. Those are Democratic voters.
So can I ask you something? Do you think that Californians love involuntary servitude, also known as slavery, in their prison structure?
So no, you guys, that's exactly my point, Haas. So that's a
they voted for it.
No, hold on. There's a prop that Hasan's talking about here in California that basically said we should get rid of slavery in the prisons, and it lost. And that's terrible that it lost. And my thesis on why it lost, when of course the Democratic voters of California, if they understood what that meant, would say, oh no, I don't want slavery in prisons, that's crazy. Yeah, but they voted against almost every left-wing.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna be the black pill. I disagree. I think there is a decent chunk of this country, and it's not saying it's me, I'm just expressing a view. There's a decent chunk of this country who thinks you do a crime, you do a time, and I don't like the idea of my tax dollars paying for your salary. I mean, for your food and shelter, and you being this drain. And so you need to pay back into society for this lost value from my tax dollars. You need to pay it back in some way. And the way you pay it back is fighting those fires or making those license plates. And I'm not saying that that's my view, but I'm saying that I would not be surprised if that was the majority of people believed.
Ballot measure, including minimum wage, because they thought, oh, the left wing is the extreme wing. They're the pro-crime wing. They're the pro-super extreme positions. So even if I'm a California...
I'd like to think that the most of them would at least still be like they need to be paid more, but I'm not sure.
Democrat, I'm voting no on everything. If a Democrat proposes it, no. And that's why we got slaughtered in this election.
So, okay. So number one, you and I both agree. Well, if I were to ask you, I think, do you think the people of Mississippi are more, are more progressive than the broader California electorate? You would probably say no.
No, yeah, culturally no.
And having said that, in the state of Mississippi, when that same exact ballot initiative was clearly defined as slavery, it passed overwhelmingly. They voted against. They voted against slavery in the prison structure.
Do you see how that makes my point?
No, my point is that the way you frame things certainly matter. It matters a lot because most people are not paying attention to anything. That's why you had people searching if Joe Biden had dropped the day before the election. That's why communication matters. That's why who you define as your enemies matter. But if we're going to talk about, so perception is important, and narrative in many instances is more important than the truth, right? We agree with that, especially in this day and age.
So framing matters a tremendous amount. We agree.
Yeah, framing matters a tremendous amount, and also narrative is more important than the truth. I think this is something that you would agree with as well.
Then again, you get into short run, long run, but yeah, it's super important.
It is. I mean, this is a narrative. This is super important. This is almost a callback to the Alan Lichtman conversation, right? Like disinformation played a big role. It's not just disinformation. It's also information that's.
Whoa, 3 buckaroos. And firefighting for such a low wage is crazy. That is crazy. Again, I think they should be paid more. I just think that a lot of people would believe that prisoners have a debt to pay.
that's coming out of like legitimate sources with authority, like legitimate
for the $2.
Outlets of information that people still trust, like their local news stations. 90% of it is owned by Sinclair Broadcasting. They're super right wing, yada yada. But also newspapers, national newspapers, things that people care about. Fox News now dominates the media consumption by 73%. Last time I checked, it's an insane number, right? So in that process, I think something that fell apart for the Democrats and their unwillingness to actually fight back and counter message on anything because they're cowardly was the issue of crime. There's been a lot of analysis on why crime rates have gone down historically, and they have completely rebounded and are trending downwards once again, as they have since the 90s, which I know you're going to get mad at, but hold on. And that most surveys conducted on the matter show that Americans think that their neighborhoods, and the crime has not increased in their neighborhoods, but actually crime has increased elsewhere. So why do they think that they're safe in their neighborhoods, but they still feel like crime is exploding in the country? I think it is because of the right-wing misinformation faucet that is completely dominating independent media and completely dominating even major newspapers, and that everyone is constantly in a holding pattern on whatever Republicans decide is the major point that they want to argue for. And because the Democratic Party basically operates...
Well, I think it's a few things. I think, one, it's the media machine, and I agree on part. I think it's the right-wing fear-mongering media machine that, or just whatever media machine that doesn't want whoever is currently in charge to be in charge, to go in there, grab a few really violent, vile instances, make everyone know the name of the victim, and try to associate that with the current administration. Like, if I was in there, then so-and-so would have never been raped. Even though, like, the idea that the president of the United States in this specific instance could have, like, changed that outcome. And from administration to administration, there's not, like, huge changes in the crime rate. So I think that it is true to some extent. It is, they are trying to sell a false bill of goods. They're trying to paint a picture that isn't totally full. And there's also a financial incentive of the fact, if you say, hey, violent crime's down 30%, coolio, that gets no viewership. But if you say, violent Venezuelan rape gangs coming to eat your cats, that might get my click. But on the other hand, I think it's also the types of crime. Like, I don't think drive-by shootings are increasing or violent, but shoplifting is increasing. And within the last year, I think increased by more than 20%. I don't know about data before that, but shoplifting has increased. And I think that is, one, an indication of economic struggle, but also an indication of, either people thinking they can get away with it, but a certain type of crime that is running amok. So I think, number one, it's fear-mongering, and number two, there is certain types of crime that have increased. Not, the worst, most violent crimes, but certain types, yes. Like, there's been very little coverage of the decrease in overdose deaths over the last year. There was a sizable decrease, like tens of thousands of people will not die this year. It's gotten, like, no coverage because it's like, who cares when things are better, or slightly getting better? People want to see things get worse, at least in their media. They want things to get better, but they tend to click things when there's an indication it might get worse.
Controlled opposition against them. They just sit there. They wait for the next talking points to come out so they can do a terrible job trying to address any of the truths of the matter. And they just get dominated over and over again. There's a second part of this, though. It's what you see, right? Now, not only have all of these, not only has the crime rate actually gone down, and I think you recognize that as well, the National Crime Victimization Survey does not show like a major blip in unreported crimes. There is definitely more unreported crimes than before, and we can address why that's happening as well. But overall, the real reason why I think a lot of people see crime everywhere, and especially in cities, in my opinion, even though Republican and red states have significantly higher rates of crime than states like California do, the reason why most people fall into this trap of assuming that California is a crime-ridden shithole as opposed to like a place like Alabama or a place like South Carolina, despite the fact that they have higher rates of crime and including violent crime than California does, is because narrative is more important than the actual truth. Also, the reason why Californians themselves genuinely believe that this is also happening and no one is addressing it
because it's actually happening.
No, it's because of what they perceive to be what they perceive to be is disorder and dysfunction and crime that is happening in every orifice of blue cities.
So
it's homeless, it's poverty, it's visible aspects of extreme poverty that in many instances can actually be a crime or will sometimes be criminalized. Homelessness, trash on the streets. You see someone doing drugs on the corner of the street.
Extreme left positions that have fucked us.
This is Gavin Newsom, the extreme leftist.
But he does agree with you guys. He
No,
was
he
on
doesn't.
your side on Prop 36.
Gavin Newsom.
He was on your side on Prop 36.
The person who physically went and cleared a homeless encampment
But
is
only
on my
after he
side.
encouraged them for 3 to 4 years straight.
No,
because he thought you guys were
you
right.
and I are in agreement if we hate Gavin Newsom, but maybe not on the same basis. I hate Gavin Newsom because he refused time and time again, despite numerous ballot measures that wanted to fix one of the most significant, most consequential aspects of why homelessness persists in a state like California. He refused to do it because he's backed by the same corporate investors that say, do not fix the housing market. Do not touch the housing market at all. Housing costs must always go up. The number one reason why homelessness persists, the number one reason why homelessness exists is because people get priced out of the market. When people get priced out of the market, they start living in their cars. When you start living in your car, you no longer have access to running water. You can't clean yourself. You lose your job. Your job attainment goes away. When you lose your job, you fall further down that pit until you arrive at the homeless guy that has been traumatized by living outside and looks like a crazy person, is probably experiencing significant mental health complications and doing drugs to self-medicate in that process. And everyone sees that and goes, that's crime. Why is no one fixing this?
No.
And that is the major issue. It's not.
I haven't gotten in here in like 20 minutes. So let me address crime.
Oh, first of all, you've definitely talked a lot more than me. I've given you all the space.
Okay, listen. So let me address crime, then we'll get to homelessness. So on crime, you have to separate out national numbers.
Gotta let them know 20% more
from local numbers. Why? Because Tennessee didn't do the same things as California and New York did. So you have to look at, okay, when they tried different things, how did it work out? So the national numbers are totally irrelevant. So when you get to California, I looked it up this morning because I knew we were going to have this discussion. So pre-pandemic to now, violent crime up 15%, homicide up 15%. By the way, crime is complicated. Not every number goes up and down in the way that you would expect, or goes up all at once or goes down all at once.
What year to year are you comparing?
2019 to now, okay? So like, because we did a lot of the reforms in 2020, okay? But it's also complicated because the pandemic actually drove crime as well. So there was a number of different factors that in. But
that's impossible. Oh, God, that's impossible to... The pandemic was like a once-in-a-lifetime event, hopefully. And, I mean, we know that it had economic impacts, societal impacts, mental health impacts. I mean, to be like, to trace that back both to the same year that COVID kicked off and the lockdowns kicked off and all of the strife that came with that and the economic downturn. We almost went into a recession. It's kind of hard to judge it that way as the inciting factor of a crime increase.
Did crime go up? You're saying no, it's just a narrative. It didn't really go up, but it did.
No,
so
crime
it did briefly go up during COVID and has now started to go down again.
Violent crime went up 15%. Homicide went up 15%.
And it's
Hold
gone
on,
down.
let me finish. Well, no. This is overall last 4 years, okay? So, yeah, it was spiked in 2020,
Yes.
2020 and 2021.
Yes.
Then it started to slowly come down, and last year it came down a little bit. But now, where is it? It's still 15% higher than when we started on violent and crime and homicide. And from where we started, it's now up 29% on retail theft, 43% on auto theft, and 52% on car accessory theft. Those are real. People feel that. Everybody's had their catalytic converter stolen. Everybody's dealt with minor crime that wasn't an issue.
Okay, I'm sorry. These things are getting a little silly. These things in the corner are getting a little fucking goofy, okay? They're getting a little goofy. That's a wealth inequality problem, not a crime problem. I get fucking mugged. No, there's not a crime problem. Here's my wallet, here's my keys, it's not a crime problem. It was just too unequal around these parts. No, okay. I'm sorry to tell people this. In some of the most equal societies in the world, there's still muggers, there's still thieves, and there's still people, when given the option between a hard day's work and a shortcut through crime, they'll choose the shortcut through crime. But it is my belief that the more economic opportunity you give people, the less likely they are to choose that option. But there's still going to be a crime problem. There's still people who are criminals because they'd rather be a criminal than work hard. I know that's wild to think about, but that's true. It's true. I know them. My family members were some of them. And there are people that had economic opportunity, said, fuck that, this is easier. Now, you could say, well, maybe that's due to societal expectations and a bunch of other factors that we can't truly account for. Maybe. But I'm saying it's not just an inequality problem. It's not. And there are a lot of people who are dealing with inequality and don't become criminals as well, indicating it is not just an inequality problem. But I think it is majorly an inequality problem, but no need to dumb it down.
Before, but is it an issue now? Those numbers are real. So when you say to them, oh no, it's just a narrative, and they're like, God damn it, man.
Even if it wasn't an inequality problem, it'd be an inequality problem causing a crime problem. You don't get mugged and say, oh, so poor around these parts. You know, you say, oh, it's dangerous here because of the crime.
My uncle got robbed and I go to the CVS and I can't get a goddamn toothpaste. You're saying CVS, imagine that bullshit, right? And so when you are telling them, don't believe your lying eyes, don't believe the numbers, you should believe me, it's just a false narrative, they don't believe you, and they were right. And so when you saw in the elections, it wasn't that the right wing tricked the people of California. And Haas, this is so important because in 2020, they tried a ballot measure that was very similar to Prop 36, okay, to repeal Prop 47, which is what reduced penalties, right? And it failed. It only got 38%. Why? Because the people had not yet felt the crime, okay? And after 2020, when the crime actually went up, they felt the crime, they experienced the crime, and they voted against the crime. None of that was narrative. It was real, and it had a massive effect on the elections in California.
Okay. So as far as retail theft, is a conversation. We've had this conversation already that retail theft is down. And not only is retail theft down, I don't know where you're getting your numbers from, but retail
which
theft,
time period?
Retail theft in terms of like...
Okay. Quick pause for a moment, guys. What have I found? I found something interesting. JD Vance. No results for Zelensky on Twitter anymore. That's strange. I could have swore he had some posts on Zelensky. Well, that's strange. Well, I'm sure he's still the Ukraine. No posts on Ukraine anymore either. What? Well, what if he spelled Zelensky the other? No. Weird music change. Okay. So, that's a little weird, isn't it? Why is it that JD Vance all of a sudden has deleted all of his anti-Ukraine tweets? Huh. That is interesting. Shouldn't think too much about it. Don't want to let it get in my head. But it sure lets the mind wander.
Organized retail theft in terms of crime across the board, even in 2020, the the actual theft. Crime is like not the violent crime and homicides. Homicides were the only thing that spiked. Okay, which is pretty consequential. It's pretty significant. Even homicides have also gone down since the major blip that they experienced in like post 2020 and 2021. As far as like retail theft goes, many of the places that claimed that there was organized retail theft occurring openly recognized that they were, using that as a way to massage their numbers. The real shrink that increased was completely adjusted to the increased foot traffic. I mean,
so
this
you're
is not
showing
even
an article from 2020. I just gave you the numbers from the last 4 years.
I know. I'm giving you. I'm showing you that like this is the article that I'm showing that says shootings and killings are up. Even in that time frame.
Right. So I just gave you the definitive numbers in the last 4 years in California. So it did go up. And Haas, like
the reason we're having a conversation that not only is wrong, it's something that the people themselves admitted to why it was wrong. That at the time I looked at the situation, I looked at the organized retail theft, I looked at the National Retailers Association numbers, and I adjusted shrink and the percentages that contribute to shrink, and found out that the overarching number of thefts that were occurring were not actually happening as a direct consequence of like organized retail theft, because no one is going to be able to steal billions of dollars worth of merchandise by organizing retail theft. It was actually happening, and you might like this, you might appreciate this, because of automation. It was happening because normal Americans, when they go into a store and they do self-checkout, which is more beneficial for corporations because now you don't have to pay benefits for cashiers. Now you don't have to, pay a whole bunch of people to actually sit at the cash register.
Hasan isn't saying that organized retail theft doesn't exist, right? He's just saying that the majority of this theft increase is actually from automation, which has caused complication. Because organized retail theft is a thing. There's whole circuits of it. There's whole circles of like groups and little gangs that form to try to shoplift and then resell, many times in bulk, because they'll get so much. They're stolen goods. It happens all the time.
Register. Now you don't have to do workers' comp. Now you don't have to do paid, family leave or anything like that, or no health care. Now you just have an automated machine that one person is controlling every now and then. In that process, they realized that shrink would actually go up because people would just go in and maybe put a Snickers bar in there and toss it in their bag. That is why shrink went up.
No,
okay,
Haas,
that is the real reason why shrink went up, or on the theft side. Okay,
two things can be true at the.
Is it so? He's saying that the increase in shoplifting in the United States is due to automation, not an increase in shoplifting. I don't know if I buy that. I mean, I could buy that that's a certain percentage, maybe like, oh man, that's half of it, and then it could make like the whole thing statistically overblown. Like I could buy that, but like that makes up all of it? No, I don't believe that.
The same time. So that point about shrinkage and automation is absolutely right. And the right wing totally ignores that. You are right to bring it up. But that doesn't mean that the actual theft at the retail level didn't happen. Number one, the numbers indicate that it happened. Number two,
finally, we got some strong men on the left to talk about real men's issues like shrinkage.
The idea that CVS, Walgreens, all these guys were just decided to pretend that the people were going to steal this stuff and start locking it up when they weren't actually stealing it is crazy. They were actually stealing it.
No, people,
that's why they locked it up.
I know.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, but
okay. So both of those things are true.
You can't make up for billions of dollars in lost revenue.
But when
from
people go to a CVS and that shit's locked up, they get super mad.
I know, and it goes back to literally the same exact thing that we were talking about with respect to seeing homeless people and being like, "This is crime. Crime is everywhere," and instilling a sense of panic.
But crime is everywhere. And look, so now let's go to homeless people.
But you're talking about organized retail theft when this conversation has already, like, we've closed the book on that. That like CEOs and CFOs have openly,
before we go to homeless people. But look, let's talk about the substance. Let's talk about the substance.
They've openly said that they lied about it. Like
no.
Yes,
Haas,
they did. This article is literally that.
Haas,
maybe.
Look, you're cherry picking.
I'm not.
And you're getting to a point that they admitted something that they did wrong, that I agree with you on. But I'm telling you that two things can be true at the same time. What you're pointing out is definitely right. And they've also admitted many other things. They also admitted that they drove up pricing during inflation because they were price gouging and they were taking profits. They bragged about in their shareholder meetings. That is absolutely right. But the crime is also correct.
No,
when you go to the substance of the actual laws, I voted yes on Prop 36. Did you vote no on Prop 36?
Prop 36 was the increasing the penalties. Yeah, I voted no on it. Yes.
Yeah. So we have a disagreement.
Yeah.
So what were the penalties? They said for theft under $950, if you've done it 3 times, then we're going to move it to a felony instead of a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Okay.
I disagree.
Yeah. Well, that's because.
Do you want to know why I disagree? Do you care?
Yeah, of course I do.
Okay, I want to know. See, this is what I wanted to get to. This is what I said I wanted them to get to, was the shoplifting position. I want to hear from Hasan if anybody should ever go to jail for shoplifting. That would be my starting question.
So
felony stealing a Snickers? Yeah, how dare they? Yeah, $340 worth of Snickers 3 times.
Couple things. This also goes back to narrative overcomes truth, and narrative is more important than truth. If I were to tell you that the state of Texas has less stringent rules on what constitutes a felony theft than the state of California, which has implemented the $900 policy since like 2014, and it's not a recent introduction into California state law, would you be surprised to find that out?
But those two things are crossed together, Huss, because when everybody talks about how California changed the laws and now you can go steal things that are under $950 all day long and it's a misdemeanor, and since it's a misdemeanor, they're going to plead you down to nothing. You publicize that, then everybody goes, shit, let's go steal some stuff because apparently it's totally fine now, and more people go and steal. So that is where the reality meets the narrative.
So you're saying that the media coverage over this has
I'm looking, and it looks like shoplifting also went up in England and Wales in 2024, up 30%. Huh. That's interesting. I haven't thought about that. I should look at shoplifting rates outside of the United States for the same time period and see if there's any differences. Because if I wanted to see that there was something about the laws that we applied, because the way that Cenk said is that we made our law so like frilly and so soft that it helped lead to this increase in crime because the left went too wild. But if it's similar increases amongst much of the developed world at the same times, then it would seem to indicate that it was mostly COVID or the fallout from COVID. But that's something I should look into.
Led to an increase of people going out and stealing stuff.
Both things are true. That the laws were changed. It did make it easier to steal, and then the media covered it, and then more people stole because the media covered it, and they're like, "Oh, it turns out you could just steal and get away with it."
So you and I agree that, like, I'm not saying that no theft has occurred. Of course, it did. We've all seen the videos, right? You and I, on the other hand, do agree that the larger, more consequential increase in shrink came from automation and not like organized retail theft. I think you would agree to that.
Yeah,
because it's impossible.
On the scale of the numbers, I hear you.
I mean, it's
I haven't looked at it myself, but that sounds right.
It is mathematically impossible for organized retail theft to contribute billions of dollars in lost revenue, because it would have to literally be like pandemonium, because the things that you're stealing, the things that you're stealing are not expensive enough. Like, they're not stealing gold bars, they're stealing deodorant and shit, right?
It depends, because like sometimes if somebody's stealing like bread, I'm not gonna jump in front of a officer, shoot them. No, I'm not doing that. Okay, but if somebody's stealing like 20 iPhones off the display case, come on,
right? So like over time, the real ways in which this happens is if this is a mass pattern change and a mass attitude change that makes it easier to steal small things here and there. Those numbers add up in a significantly larger way to the overall shrink of the companies. They know that. They already baked that into their profit margins, because it's still cheaper for them to lay off a shit ton of their employees and allow some people to steal, and it contributes to the shrink. What they also did, and this is not just the Walgreens wasn't the only one, or CVS wasn't the only one. There was.
By the way, I'm looking online. I'm reading from the Council on Criminal Justice right now. Due to a lack of available data, the report does not examine factors that could be influencing the trends. Potential factors include changes in retailers' anti-theft measures, changes in how retailers report shoplifting to law enforcement, which could be based on their perceptions of to the extent to which local police or prosecutors will apprehend suspects and pursue criminal charges. Because this data relies on reported incidents, there's almost certainly undercount to total shoplifting, and the findings presented here should be viewed with consideration. So I was just trying to look for potential causes and what's making up the increase is what I'm looking for now.
Brick and mortar retail is incredibly expensive. They're getting dominated by Amazon, that has now purchased Whole Foods and is doing Amazon Fresh, and they're getting dominated by grocery delivery services. Okay, they cannot compete and maintain brick and mortar retail stores. That's why I believe one of these major chains actually went bankrupt recently. I think it was CVS or Walgreens that literally had to close all of their stores.
Yes, but we agree on all that. And I'll add on top of that, private equity buys them, and then they reduce their costs.
So
which then drives
so
if
you
vicious cycle.
Oh, Rite Aid was the one that that went bankrupt.
I understand all that, but you're not addressing the point. That can be true while crime going up can also be true.
No, I'm afraid you are laser focusing on a more you're laser focusing on something that invokes emotion when actually looking at the data shows that the much larger problem here, or the much not even a real problem for them.
This is interesting though. Let me read this. 95% of shoplifting incidents in 2019 and 2020, 2021 involved one or two people, and only 0.1%, or about 1 out of every 1,000, involved more than 6. Well, 6 is a weird number to start at. You could have done 3 or 4 or something, but point is, it looks like those really big stealing groups are pretty rare. I would have started maybe at 4 or something. I don't know. 6 is kind of a high barrier.
One is larger.
I think I can only think of 3 people I could convince to go stealing with me. Yeah, I would not be included in this data. It needs to be more inclusive and more diverse criminals like me.
Is actually coming
went
from
up 29%. It did go up. It is real. So do you get that it's counterproductive when you keep saying things that make people think that you think that they're making it up in their head and it's not real at all?
Because I have looked at the actual numbers.
But do you see that makes them that alienates them even more?
Okay.
You're saying even though it went up 29%, I want you to pretend that it didn't. No, and I want you to say it's not real. Well, they're not going to say it.
No.
And the elections prove it.
Okay. Let me give you a parallel here. The Democratic Party kept saying, right, that the economic impact that Americans were facing was inconsequential, that the economy was good actually, right? They kept repeating it over and over again, and people were like, what the fuck are you talking about, right? My anger towards the Democrats in that regard was that they basically, and I use as an example on the Pod Save America episode that I hosted yesterday. And this is a famous tweet that I'm basically paraphrasing. If you saw a homeless person and chucked 2 pennies at them, okay, and then they yelled at you and they were like, "Fuck you, why are you giving me 2 pennies, piece of shit?" Technically, you did improve their, material wealth by 2 pennies. Why are they being angry? Why are they angry at me for genuinely improving their material wealth by 2 pennies? You can frame every number and every percentage in a way that suits your argument, but what you have to look at is the actual data, which I have done. That's why I bring up the National Retailers Association numbers when I'm having this conversation.
Also, the more I look at this data, the more clear it is to me that it varies widely depending on city. For example, in 2023, there was it's 64% increase between January 2019 to 2023 in New York, 64% increase. But then in fucking Minneapolis, it's 57% decrease. In St. Paul, 65% decrease. Austin, 47% decrease. Then you go over to Los Angeles, 61% increase. Virginia Beach, 44% increase. Cincinnati, 22% decrease. So it depends from city to city, which isn't surprising, but giant variety.
Conversation with you about shrink increasing overall. When you say retail theft went up 29%,
so much of this is New York. Oh my goodness.
What you're failing to account for, and by the way, retail shrink has gone down for the record year over year.
All the numbers are better in the last year.
But the instance where it did go up It actually went up because there was more foot traffic in comparison to the year prior. When there's more people going into the stores, there are more people who are able to steal stuff. And if you and I both agree that it's not organized retail theft that is like massively contributing to the increase in shrink, but instead it's actually automated. It's automated
Haas,
cash registers.
But they don't care
and
about
self-checkout.
But Haas, the average guy doesn't care what is leading to CVS's declining profit.
So you're saying the average guy doesn't care about the truth?
Let me finish. What the average guy cares about is, oh, I went to the store the other day, and I've heard this story 100 times, and they're not making it up, and it's backed up by the numbers. I went to the store the other day. Some douchebag walks in, grabs a bunch of stuff, and leaves. And then I feel like a sucker sitting here paying for it because apparently anybody can come rob this place. And that's not even recorded in the numbers. And the numbers are still up. And there's a giant mountain of things that did not get reported because there was a period of
Shoplifting is underreported. By how much? I have no clue.
couple of years here in LA. It's better now, where I was we probably talked about this before too. I was at a Supercuts. The window's broken. Why? Oh, people come in here all the time, take whatever they want. They smash the windows. We stopped calling the cops because the cops aren't showing up. Why aren't the cops showing up? Partly because they were trying to prove a point. Oh yeah, you guys are protesting us. We're not going to work. But another reason was because they would bring people to the DA, and the DA would say, not just because of Prop 47, because George Gascon said, don't prosecute them. Don't prosecute. Put them back on the street. Put them back on the street.
In terms of not reporting crimes,
went up.
I can't speak for your local.
They care about what happens to them at the grocery store, and they care that, hey, I don't care about the goddamn shrinkage. What I care about is when I go to buy
shrink
that.
is theft. That's why
Yeah, man, you can have fun at any size. I agree.
saying shrink. It's not about
Really, this is good positive masculine representation. These are issues that men would be scared to regularly take a brave stance on. I commend him for it.
the profit margins.
When they go
shrink
in,
is
the thing
literally
is-
theft.
Small ain't bad at all.
All those things are locked up, and they're not
I'm done.
locked up because of what you're saying. They're locked up because of the crime.
They are locked up because they do want to prevent retail theft in general. That's the reason why they lock it up, because of course they don't want people to come in and steal shit, even if it's inconsequential to their larger, even if it's inconsequential to their profit margins. They still don't want people to go in and in the chance that
So
it's
you think-
easy to steal. They lock the shit up.
So
yes.
you think the people of California in mass all got
Yeah.
tricked by the right wing into thinking there was crime when there wasn't that much crime?
I think that people saw homelessness and diminishing material conditions for a lot of working class Californians and it's not an accident that like blue areas and blue cities are significantly more like swinging to the right than red cities were.
Well, that's red cities. What red cities? I mean, there was a few, I guess. Wait. Let's see. What's considered a red city? Dallas votes blue, though. You can't say Dallas. Dallas is the option I get? Really? Jackson, Mississippi. See, that makes more sense. Jackson, Mississippi. Yeah, that makes sense.
Or red states were in general.
Oh, okay. I was trying to figure out. Well, I mean, we have more crime in cities because you condense more people in one location. In urban settings, or like easy. I mean, there's different types of crime in rural areas. Like, there's not going to be a lot of like cow stealing in the city, I guess. But I mean, if you condense tons of people into a small area, right, and then have high housing prices, yeah, you get crime.
They saw homelessness directly caused
Nature of cities.
By the housing market being completely unsustainable, and they attributed that to an increase of violent crime happening everywhere and it being bedlam when the data doesn't show that reality at all. And to make up for that massive gap in the data, by saying, oh, people are simply not reporting crimes when we're talking
But I'm
about.
telling you, the data does back it up. I've proven it overwhelmingly.
I don't know.
And then on top of that, there's another mountain of unreported crime. But I don't even need the unreported crime. The crime went up. Look.
I don't know where your data is coming from.
Public Policy Institute of California. So you could look it up. Crime on the cars 43% on auto theft over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
52% on car parts. And you keep telling them it didn't happen when their catalytic converter got stolen. They know it happened. Now let's go to homelessness. So that's again like the trans ad at the end of the campaign. It's in my opinion, it's a combination.
The Public
of the
Policy
corporate.
Institute of California. Is that what you're talking about? Is that where you got this information from?
Yeah.
That California's violent crime rate rose somewhat in 2023 and remains above pre-pandemic levels. This is what you're talking about,
So
right?
look, keep going down. You see,
Okay.
right? So
California's
for
overall
example,
violent crime rate by 1.7 increased by 1.7 from 495 crimes in 2020 to 503 in 2023.
Yep.
Like the rest of the nation, California saw a jump in violent crime in the first year of the pandemic. The state's violent crime rate is still up by 15.4% compared to 2019. This is what you're talking
Exactly what
about.
I said. 15% since 2019.
Okay. Fair.
And then you see violent crime, you see homicide, you see home burglaries go down, but
So this is
commercial
this is from-
burglaries go up.
This is from 2023.
So they're saying the 2023 numbers are better. That's why I've been saying throughout the 2023 numbers are better, right? But what they're saying is when
No,
you
you
look
mean
at a
2024 numbers are better.
the recent numbers,
Yeah, the
right?
latest numbers.
The
are,
latest numbers they're saying anyway.
Yes.
So the last 4 years though, when you look at pre-pandemic to now, all the numbers are much worse.
Okay.
Oh, no, not all the numbers, almost all the numbers. So when you go to homelessness,
I don't think this is just from Oakland. This is across the board, chat. This
That's
is
California.
Yeah, this is California. They're saying they adjusted it to the Oakland Police Department incomplete reporting.
Yeah, look, you can make all the excuses you want, okay, but those are real numbers. I'm not addressing to you. I'm addressing to whoever said that.
Yes.
Okay, so look, now when you turn to homelessness, again, we have, in my opinion, the corporate left. There is no corporate left. The corporate Democrats, right? And they, what I would call the extreme left, get together. And so you're absolutely right. Gavin Newsom wants to protect his real estate donors who are among his top 2 donors, right? He wants housing prices to keep going up because the real estate guys get paid off of that. Number 2, he wants to has a ton of donors that they dole out and allies that they dole out money to nonprofit groups. They dole out money to we're going to buy that place and we're going to turn it into housing for the homeless.
I'm sorry, can
Except they never turn it into housing.
Why do we keep
for the
talking
homeless.
about like extreme left is like bad here? Like Hasan is like friends with like Hakeem and gang. He's like playing Bad Empanada videos on stream and like he's a pretty left swing guy. It's not even like holding it against him. He would be considered on the extreme American left in the United States. He just keeps saying it as like a condemnation when like that's like Hasan's homies. Like why are we even like what's like the extreme left?
They just pay 3 times as much to buy the property.
Can I say something?
All of that stuff is true, but 2 things can be true at the same time. At the same time, on the city council level, in LA and San Francisco and Oakland, when anybody went to say, hey, listen, I don't think we should have people shooting up in public. I don't think we should do the local meth market in the middle of town.
Okay.
The extreme left would show up, the political activists. They literally threw a brick at London Breed. They thought she wasn't extreme enough. And they're like, no, liberty for the homeless. And they're like weirdo libertarians pretending to be on the left. And so they're saying, no, we should do nothing.
What's with all these like random like pointers from like the this isn't Hasan editing this after the fact. This is like isn't this like a fan account? This is a fan account, Hasan Reactions. So this is a fan account edited by Hasan Reactions. It says that at the bottom. So this is a fan account. Oh god, I lost where we were. This is a fan account just giving their like little tidbit every little bit. Okay.
No, but you're not looking at the overall trends of crime.
I know, but I've pointed that out 1,000 times.
I know, but
that trend that happened in the 1990s has nothing to do with the trend since
it's
2020.
It's not just 1990s. Like
It's since 1960.
Since 2000, okay, crime has noticeably decreased and
But
continues
no one
to do
disagrees
so.
with that, Haas.
Okay, so when you say there's a blip, and what we have to do is basically engage in even more rigorous enforcement in a state that has literally by the Supreme Court in the past been told to reduce the number of people that are in their prison system because the prisons are filled to the brim with a bunch of nonviolent offenders with no with no indication that they're going to reoffend. And
But that's not what has happened at all.
Saying that, no, just
These are recidivists, Haas. That's why Prop 36 fixes the problem of recidivism. If you've done it 3 times, brother, you're a recidivist.
See, this is where we totally, completely disagree with one another. If you think that like the 3 strikes rule in any sort of implementation of like,
it goes from misdemeanor to felony. Absolutely.
More aggressive prosecution and more draconian punishments being implemented are a demonstrable failure universally. That's the reason why America has a higher rate of recidivism than all of the other comparable OECD nations that have significantly more tolerant approaches and significantally better solutions in terms of identifying why crime happens, which is poverty.
You're conflating 2 different issues.
All of them are like after 3. Well, okay, but I think most of those countries, after 3 offenses, they're going to put a guy in a cell for stealing.
I'm not.
America's prison system is awful. It needs massive reform. There's no reason for us to have this brutal, stupid system. It contributes to a lot of the problems that we're having. But at the same time, when you say, hey, if you do this 3 times, 4 times, 8 times, 9 times, I'm still going to keep it a misdemeanor. That doesn't have anything to do with the state of our prisons. I'm not telling you to.
Does.
No, hold on. I'm not
That's
telling
the reason why they're doing it.
I'm not telling you to beat those guys. I'm not telling you to torture them.
Again, it's just too much good faith. He's all heart and no brain. Yeah, I agree that a lot of them are probably doing it over and over again because they're not being well reformed in our prison system. But that doesn't mean you just let them out to like keep stealing every day and just every day we're just gonna like. There has to be a line. Whether or not society failed them, they foremost failed themselves. And of course, society at large could have failed them for not providing them with the proper opportunities. But I mean, like you could use this logic to be like, well, of course he did a hit for that gang. He didn't have any like opportunities to become a carpenter. Like you can make that argument, but once you've crossed that line of no return, like they've committed the crime, they've done the thing, now you have to deal with it. You can't like just because society hasn't been tuned to be the most fair for everybody born into it, doesn't mean we can't doesn't mean we don't deal with the results. I mean, you can try to deal with it by making a better reformed criminal justice system. But no matter what criminal justice system you have, you've got to contain dangers to society. And if somebody's constantly stealing iPhones and shoplifting or constantly getting into fights, these are people who are dangers to society, who need to be cordoned off from society until they can no longer be a danger to society.
Those guys, I'm not telling you to put.
So I agree on the idea that we need a reformative criminal justice system. But I'm also not naive and think that if we did that all the crime would go away. Or we might have less recidivism, but what about for the people who still commit those crimes? Because that's just the way they were born. That's the way they were raised. They made the independent decision that it was easier to steal than it was to go to school.
Put them in jail for the rest of their lives. This is not 3 strikes and you're out. This is 3 strikes and it's a felony, brother. It's a felony. You're saying 18 strikes. That motherfucker goes into the store, robs it 18 times, and you're still going to call it a misdemeanor?
Do you agree with the crime bill now of Joe Biden, the architect of the crime bill, like crime control bill? That was a successful method.
So that is a complicated calculus because back then what they would do is they would say, and this is what I hated, and this is the criminal justice reform that I wanted, which is, oh, you smoked marijuana. That's it. We're putting you in prison for 20 years. What the? No, I don't agree on marijuana.
That's not what I asked. That's not what I asked.
No, but you're asking a bill that has all these different parts. Some parts I agree with, and some parts I don't agree with.
I'm asking you a very specific component of the bill, 3 strikes law, which means that
if 3 strikes and you're out forever. No, I don't agree with that.
Okay. So, but you do agree.
That's a life sentence. Okay. I'm not saying that. This is 3 strikes
but you do
and
agree
it's a felony.
But you do agree in adding more aggressive.
Dylan, how do you feel about being called to answer to the House Committee on Un-American Activities? I'll snitch on everyone. I'm snitching on my mama. I'm snitching on my papa. I'm snitching on all the streamers. Snitching on all the Democrats. Okay, man, call me Joseph McCarthy. Okay, I am going home and playing Stalker 2.
adding like a felony attachment
more aggressive
to
punishment.
Okay.
Not brutal punishment,
Let's
not weirdo
why
torture
don't-
punishment,
why don't
but
you-
normal aggressive punishment
Okay,
to
why don't you
recidivists.
why don't you agree with the three strikes law on principle?
Because it's too draconian and it doesn't match proportionally the crime. Because your third strike, like happened in Louisiana, was a guy who stole a slice of pizza, got a life sentence. No, that's disproportionate. When you smoke marijuana and they give you a life sentence or 20 years or 10 years or even 1 day, that's disproportionate.
So for you, it's
we want
$900.
So we want a criminal justice reform to bring us back into moderation, not to bring it back to a different extreme, the opposite extreme.
Okay. So petty theft being considered a felony is something that you're on board with as long as it's not just like a slice of pizza.
No, as long as you.
The problem is this has to be it. It can't be that you can steal and then go out and then steal and then go out and then steal and then go out. There has to be a way to break the cycle. I don't know if it needs to be a felony, but it has to be the type of thing where somebody is constrained and stopped from stealing and has to pay some consequence at some point. After like the third case of that much value, right? And think about the amount you talk about. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of dollars. We're not talking about a few pieces of bread to survive. We're not talking about some baby formula. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars being stolen on multiple occasions.
You're doing it over and over again. So if somebody goes and steals something, they're a kid, they're 14, do I want them to haunt them the rest of their lives? No, I don't. Okay. But somebody's 27 and they've now committed 8 robberies of stuff that's $850. And if you let him out, you're an idiot, you're a schmuck, and he should come to your house and rob that house over and over and over again because you're saying, I'm cool with it. And I'm not cool with it. You do it 3 times, that means you're a criminal. This was not an accident. You did it on purpose. And I'm not saying throw the book at you. I'm just saying it's obviously a felony. If you can't understand that that's the moderate position, then you're out of step with the voters.
Okay. So the reason why I have a different approach to this than you, I think, is because I understand the state of the California prison structure, and I understand that California already has some pretty awful and draconian punishments that they implement, and that is the disagreement here. I understand that the crime apprehension method, the best possible way to reduce crime, is by improving some of the most consequential aspects that cause people to go and do crime. I don't think that people do crime because they're like evil people. I think they do it because in the overwhelming majority of circumstances, they are a victim of their material conditions. They're a victim of circumstance.
No, you're going too far.
Wait, what do you mean?
So does poverty contribute to crime?
I mean, I would think that's the majority of it. I like 60% maybe. I would lean towards maybe 65. But like 30 to 35% still pretty significant. I mean, I'm just guessing here. I'm trying to be favorable to Hasan.
Of course it does.
Okay.
So when the right wing says, oh, no, it's just like evil, demon-possessed people and their socioeconomic condition has nothing to do with it, that's absurd. Of course, poverty causes crime to some degree. But you're taking a macro issue and applying it to a micro case. So when the guy goes in and hits a woman in the face with a brick, that's not because his material conditions were problematic. That guy's got mental issues, okay? And so and you got to lock that guy up, or he's going to hit another woman in the face with a brick, right? So you can't take the macro. You should address both of those things. The way you address the macro issues, bring down poverty, create better prison system like Norway does. It reduces recidivism greatly. It gets you to a better result. So you should do all those things.
But if you want decreased brickings in the street, shouldn't our first priority be better mental health care instead of just arresting one guy for, learning, practicing bricklaying incorrectly?
Things that I agree with you on, but you should
I'm being
also
facetious. I'm sorry.
Say no on an individual level. If you keep committing crime, I don't think it's because you're an angel that just got misdirected and you're Jean Valjean and you stole a loaf of bread because your sister's kid needed it. No, you're a guy who thinks I can get away with crime, so I'm going to do more crime. If you think that doesn't exist, you're in La La Land. Of course, people are human. They respond to incentives and disincentives. And when you say there's now no punishment, in effect, it's not real. Misdemeanor is real punishment, but unfortunately, because it gets pled down to almost nothing, it becomes in effect no punishment. Of course, normal human beings are going to react by going, okay, I guess it's illegal to steal now.
Okay, but since I thought we established this basis that in terms of retail theft being like you're pairing up numbers that don't actually add up to a hyper-specific anecdote of a serial criminal that you've made up in your mind. You're making
I'm not making it up.
as,
It's in the numbers.
no, it's not in the numbers because we disagree. I think the broader the broader scope of this analysis requires you to look at the actual ways in which retail theft is occurring and what is the actual contributor to the problem.
A huge percentage of the crime is committed by recidivists. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but you guys could look it up.
No, but in the
my
grand
point
scheme of things, it's not one. There's no world in which one singular person is responsible, or 1,000 people are responsible for the brunt of the overwhelming majority of overwhelming majority of retail theft.
When you say, Haas, that there's almost no consequences for theft under $1,000, you will get more people stealing under $1,000. That's the most obvious thing in the world, and that's exactly what happened. So you
No, that's not what happened.
You keep pointing out a different problem. And I'm telling you, yeah, that's also true. That's also true.
That's not what happened.
Did crime go up? Yes.
You and I are.
So you're saying that if there's no 3 strikes on moving into a felony, that it's not going to affect people at all. Are you actually saying
there
that?
is no world in which people are actually contributing to the retail theft in a meaningful fashion because they're constantly going back and stealing.
You keep going back to retail theft. How about the catalytic converters?
Okay.
How about property crime? How about auto theft?
Fine. The reason why I'm using retail theft as an example is because you use it as an example.
But all these examples are the same thing. They're all
it's
going
one
up
area that I actually
because
have.
we're not punishing it.
It's one area where I have
Should we
actually
punish
looked
it?
into the data. That's the reason why I'm
we punish
using
it,
retail
or
theft.
should we say, oh, those poor angels?
Crime already gets punished. That's the whole point. That's what
But
I'm
a
saying.
misdemeanor
The
is
idea
basically not punishing.
no, that's not true. The idea that like criminals are not being punished at all in the state of California
because of
is a
cash
ridiculous
bail.
lie.
No, but Haas, no, you're literally wrong here, factually incorrect. When you have cash bail, no cash bail, combined with lowering felonies to misdemeanors, what it does is it says this is a misdemeanor. I cannot keep you in prison. There is no cash bail, so you're free to go. Okay. So then that says to the average guy who's not a rocket scientist, because that's how he wound up stealing shit from CVS. Oh, I just stole from CVS, or I just stole your catalytic converter and they let me out. So that means I should do it again and do it again and do it again. So Haas, are you saying if they do it 400 times, you're still going to call it a misdemeanor?
They're not going to do it 400 times. What are you talking about? That's insane.
This is so simple. It's so easy. It's like, for example, if I'm talking to somebody about abortion and I'm like, yeah, a woman should have a right to choose. And they're like, okay, what if they're actively giving birth and the baby's head's about to come out and they grab like a claw hammer and they just start, beating it back in because they don't want to have it. And like, yeah, well, obviously I don't agree with that. Just say that. Like, even if you think it's this ridiculous, just say that. Just say that. But the thing is, we know that there's repeat offenders. There are repeat offenders, right? You can just say, in the vast majority of instances, this isn't the case. But for those instances, yeah, I think they should be locked up. Just say that. It's so simple. It's so easy. It's so easy.
If someone was literally going in and stealing something 400 times in a row, it would not be a blip on the actual broader billions of dollars that are increased in shrink.
So there's no recidivism.
No, it's ridiculous.
What do you mean? That's what, 400 times? Like, you can get a few $1 million with that. Depends what you're grabbing, I guess.
Recidivism is the majority of crime.
I know recidivism is the majority of crime. Why is it the states with better?
Why can't I draw a line on repeat offenders?
Because you're not addressing the problem. When you say these are repeat offenders, we have to bring the law down when we already do. When we already do bring the law down on these people.
We don't. We literally don't. You live in a gets pled down to nothing.
You're talking about a state that has some of the highest percentage of incarcerated in comparison to the rest of the planet, and you're making it seem as though California is letting criminals roam free.
But they literally, Gavin Newsom let out tons of criminals, and then he said, "Oh, I'm saving $150 million."
That's great. Okay, thank you for bringing that up. You, in the past, falsely said that Gavin Newsom is letting 75,000 prisoners roam the streets. Okay,
tell me how much he released from the prisons.
Do you know
like Bane from like Batman?
Do you know the structure in which this prisoner release program works? Do you think that it just means like, oh, you're a rapist? Go ahead, be free.
I never said that.
Okay, you're a thief.
No,
go ahead, be free.
No, they're saying, hey, you have not served your time, but Gavin Newsom would like to save more money so he could give more of it to his donors. So
Great.
we're going to let you out of prison, even though you
What a wild way to phrase it, man. It's all about, look, money and politics is a real issue, but for Cenk, it's always the donors. It's how he looks at foreign policy. It's how he looks at everything. For everything, it's just the donors. It's just fight the donor class. Fight the donor class. Ay. Gappy, thank you for the raid of 65. I was going to raid you, so now I don't know what to do. But thank you for the 65 people. Welcome. We're watching Cenk and Hasan have a polite conversation.
Wait, that's how it happened? No, that's not how it happened, okay? They looked at people...
Check out Dylan Burns TV on YouTube for freelance war journalism covering the war in Ukraine.
...with less likelihood to reoffend, and they actually still went through the same exact process that you normally go through in a state where...
They changed the law.
The penalties...
It can't be the same process if they change the law.
No.
Hey, Project 2025. Thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub to Gappy, one of your main authors and supporters. Gappy used to tell me all the time, like, man, you know, I think the Democrats are not giving Project 2025 like a real shake. Like, we need to get the train back on the tracks. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he was like, well, I'm just saying that this country is, you know, gone to hell. I mean, gone to hell. I don't know. I think America, there's still like a bunch of things positive about it. But no, he was like really adamant about it. He's really adamant about it. Yeah, Gappy loved Project 2025. I don't know why. It seemed really niche. It's kind of strange. But yeah, no, he was a big on that. Really big on that.
Process is still the same. They just shortened the sentences in a state where sentences are already so long. We're talking about people who are going to spend 30 years in prison.
What was it you said about a woman's right to choose? If they choose that, who knows what else they'll be able to choose? I ended the conversation quick because I didn't even know how to approach a statement like that. From Gappy5, GAPPYV on Twitch, twitch.tv/GAPPYV. But I mean, you know, it's a free country. The YouTube chat's so confused. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't you worry about it, YouTube chat.
And why were they going to spend 30 years in prison?
Spent 20
why
years.
were they going to spend 30 years? Because they stole pizza? No, because they committed rape or murder.
No. Just listen. I'm using 30 as a number. I'm giving you 30. It could be 5 years in prison. Okay, they were going to spend 5 years in prison. They've spent 3 already. So now they've actually put them in front of a parole board ahead of time instead of serving out the 5 years of their prison sentence.
That's right. And they're letting them go too early. That's right. I think they should serve their sentences.
They should serve 5 years in prison. You think the extra 2 years?
You know what the hell they got the 5 years for?
The extra
guys, you can steal.
I do know. As a matter of fact, I do know.
Ad infinitum and not get a felony. A felony is 1 year or higher. To get a 5-year sentence is significant.
Okay.
And you think they all...
This is going to be the problem, though, for someone like Hasan on not, like, just conceding the point. Like, yeah, if somebody repeats it, does it, like, 20 times, I think they should be treated differently than somebody just trying to survive. That's not a hard concession to make. It really isn't. But it's also, like, about safety of the community. It's about the feeling of safety. People want to feel safe in their own towns. They want to feel safe to be able to walk down the street. They want to feel safe to be able to go to the store. They want to feel safe to be able to walk their dog and go fish at the local, lake or wherever. They want to feel safe to be able to do that. And they feel like those who are either terrorizing the community or stealing from the local mom and pop shops or even stealing from the local CVS, it could be a chain store. If they feel like these people who are engaging in repeat offenses are able to just continue to operate, and especially if it's a crime that includes assault, like if they assaulted any staff or anything like that, it makes people feel unsafe. And they don't feel like these people are really contributing to the community, which, I mean, stealing is not much contributing. And so it's not just about, like, the loss to the business. It's not just about, the rule of law, so to speak, and the principle of the matter. I think it's also about how people feel in their own communities. And they feel like the people around them are part of the community and they're not taking from it. And they're not pushing people or pushing businesses away from it. And, like, when you talk about these big stores and parts of the city that get tons and tons and tons and tons of business, a little stuff stolen here and there is not going to matter all that much. But depending on, the town and where the business gets its money and whether or not they can just pivot somewhere else, like, for some towns, like, that can have an impact.
did nothing. They were all Jean Valjean, and we're just releasing them.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they're Jean Valjean. Their capacity to reoffend is not going to change dramatically between the 3 years that they're being let out if the parole board finds them eligible and analyzes their capacity to reoffend in the process.
In
if
a
you
new
think that
law
those people,
where they say, but you should let them out.
no, that's not true. You're wrong. This is Fox News shit. That's why I'm so frustrated with this conversation.
Are they out or are they not out, Haas? Did they change the law or did they not change the law?
Because that means that there was
they changed the law and now they're out.
Yeah,
what part of that is complicated?
Because that means there's a shit ton of people that actually have been found by the exact same parole boards with no capacity to reoffend in their analysis that have actually been let out early, and they shouldn't have been in prison for that long to begin with. That's my point. If you think that
so they literally let out criminals that you think should be let out, even though you don't know any of their cases.
Because I don't believe in the idea that there is a major difference between someone serving a 5-year sentence and a 3-year sentence.
So you think all the sentences should be lower, which creates a disincentive, which creates an incentive for more crime.
If that was the case, then there would be significantly more crime in every other country on the planet than the United States of America.
No, their system is entirely different. You're
why is
talking
it
about
entirely
one
different?
portion of their system when their system is 100% different than ours. If you said to me, let's go to the Norwegian model, I'd say yes in a second.
Look, there's a point at where like the disincentive cancels out. Like if you're gonna go to prison for 30 years, 40 years doesn't really feel like all that much of a difference at the point of committing a crime. At year 25, I'm sure 40 years feels like a lot more. But at the point of committing the crime, it doesn't make much of a difference. It's why I'm not in favor of the death penalty. Not only am I not in favor of the death penalty because then you cannot redo a trial, re-examine the facts, and release someone if a mistake is found. But and there's also, of course, the executions of innocent people, etc. But I also have yet to find any strong evidence that it actually acts as a powerful disincentive in comparison to a life sentence or 60, 70 years, etc. And so is killing a certain amount of innocent people every year and pending the money that you have to in order to do these executions, on top of the fact getting the ire of, let's just say, other civilized countries who don't participate in that anymore, is it worth it for a disincentive that we don't really know about or have strong evidence for? I'm sure if you went from like jaywalking is like a small fine to the death penalty, like, yes, that's going to act as a disincentive. But if you went from a small fine to the life penalty, I don't think you would see an actionable difference between the change in policy.
Okay,
and that,
but you're pushing the country in your as a massive progressive online commentator. You're pushing in the exact opposite direction.
I don't want crime.
I'm saying
yes, I am.
But it's not a deterrence. It's not a real deterrence. It's not. It's demonstrably unsuccessful.
Except for the fact that it was.
How we cannot say that prison time is not a deterrent. Prison time is a deterrent. It's just a question of whether prison time in and of itself is enough to deter people. I would say no, there also has to be reform. There has to be reformation for the people. They need to be offered another chance, or they'll think that all they know is a cell and running from the cell.
And the numbers went up, and
Wait,
the
what?
voters
No,
agree
it
with
wasn't.
me.
No,
and
the voters agreeing with you doesn't matter. We're looking at the actual. We're looking at.
You think all the Democratic voters are wrong, even though the numbers prove that they are right?
Democratic voters voted for
recidivism. Repeat offenders are no big deal.
Democratic voters in the primary process voted for Joe Biden. Democratic voters voted in the primary process for Joe Biden. Do you think that the country would be worse off without Medicare for all or not?
So, Haas, there is both of those. We talked about this already. Both the reality and the narrative have an effect. Okay. So sometimes the narrative that is wrong pushes things over the edge and makes a difference. And so that's why the Joe Bidens of the world win, because they have overwhelming propaganda in the primaries. In this case,
but you don't think there's overwhelming propaganda in terms of being...
Let me finish. In this case, you're saying, oh, it's the same kind of propaganda, right?
Yes.
It doesn't actually exist, but we their minds, and then they think that it exists when it's poor people who just are innocent.
Look, I don't want to completely call it ridiculous, the idea that there's fear-mongering about certain crimes that are in general decreases, and because people are not given the context of general crime decreases while showed these horrific stories, they imagine that this type of stuff is going on around them, and then it could weigh on the decision-making when it comes to voting or otherwise more than it necessarily should, or give them, it could misconstrue the situation. This is something I agree with. I agree with that. So, look, they have to both present each other's opinions in the most ridiculous light possible, because that's just how Cenk debates. Honestly, out of the two of them, I feel like Hasan's the one that's being more cordial, which is strange. So strange, in fact, that I think I'm tapping out now. Because now that I've said that out loud, I need to reassess some things. Drip, drip, drip. The drip never stops. Okay.